Welcome, everyone, to the second Data Career Summit. This is Dustin. I am co-host of the event along with Brandi, Beals, and we are so glad that you're joining. We have folks joining from all over the world. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're joining from. You know, Brandi and I started this event as just two people that worked in the field. And, over the years, we started to get questions from folks on how do I get into this data and analytics field? How does my son or daughter get into the field? How could I potentially transition into one of the data fields? And this event was really created to help answer those questions on a greater scale. We knew that, it was great that folks were asking us these questions and that we could do a decent job of answering them ourselves. But to answer them on a larger scale, we needed to bring in all of the experts and folks within the field to help address those questions so that more folks can enter the field, more folks can transition in the field, and more folks can rise up in the ranks in the field. So that's what today is all about. First, you're gonna hear from Brandi very shortly, and ultimately our opening keynote. But first, we have just a few announcements that we're going to go through. So as you're joining, to be sure to introduce yourself in the chat. Let us know where you're coming from throughout the day today. Be sure to ask questions. Let folks know if you're looking for a role, if you're looking to have a certain question answered, if you want to network, please do that in the chat. Few updates from us first here. The first one is please take a moment to subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you haven't already, please do that. It does help us out. We have a lot of content that's going to be coming on YouTube, including highlights and clips from today's session. So please do take a moment and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Another request that we have is, as you learn things today, as you have epiphanies and thoughts on some of the things that you're learning about, please do share it out on your favorite social media channel. So I put a few up there, but I'm sure you all have a favorite. Use hashtag Data Careers Summit. Put it right up there on the screen. You also see it's kind of crawling around on the ticker down at the bottom. As you are learning today, you have things you want to share, please share it out to hashtag Data Careers Summit on social media. And then also, we do have some really cool giveaways. We are going to give these away at the end of the event today. So around 11:55 a.m. Central Time. If you haven't seen them, go ahead and take a look at these. If you go to datacareersummit.com, scroll down to the bottom of the page, there's links to each of these giveaways. There's some really cool stuff here. So several $1,000s worth of giveaways here. Please take a look. Please register. There's still time. This will close at 11 a.m. Central. All right. At this point, I am going to bring my co-host Brandi Beals up. Hey, Brandi. Good morning. It's morning time here in Milwaukee, where Brandi and I are.
Hi. Good morning.
So I think
I'm really excited to be here. It's going to be a really great event. And I'm really incredibly honored to be able to introduce our keynote speaker for today's event. He's someone who has inspired many people, and personally, he's pushed me to share my ideas through my blog. But he is the co-author of the Big Book of Dashboards and a senior data evangelist at Tableau. Please welcome Andy Cotgreave.
Well, hello, everybody, and it is fantastic to be here with you all today. First of all, let me say a huge thank you to Brandi and Dustin for this event. It's not easy organizing events like this, and it's really a great honor to be part of helping people in their data career. Now, it's great seeing all your comments. I'm seeing where you're all from. Before we start, I do want to know a little bit about you all, two other pieces of information. Dustin, could you share my screen, please? I'm going to be talking about my career in data, but before I start, I want you to type in the chat, how many years have you been working in data, or months if it's less than 1 year? And what is the tool or platform you work with most? So how many years and what tool or platform do you work with most if you are working with a data tool? Me, I'm Andy. I've been 17 years in this data career, which is crazy. And my tool of choice is Tableau. So I'm going to see, I'm seeing 4 years, 2 months, Python Tableau, Excel, Stata, SAS, Python, Tablet. Right. Okay. So keep them coming in. I can see your chat as they come in. And what I'm enjoying is seeing there's a good variety and a lot of new starters. All right. So my career in data. Well, my name is Andy Cotgreave, Senior Data Evangelist at Tableau and co-author of the Big Book of Dashboards. If you're after a big book of dashboards, i.e. real-world examples you can be inspired by, go check that out. Before I start, I want to share my favorite review of the Big Book of Dashboards, and it was written by my daughter Lucy. Here she is when the book came in the summer the book came out. We went on holiday and she wrote in her journal, "This is my dad's book and I think it's really boring because it's about dashboards." Thanks, Lucy, for the vote of confidence. Now, maybe when she's out at university and beyond, she'll come to the Data Careers Summit as it's grown and grown and grown and becomes a global event, and she'll relearn that actually dashboards are blooming awesome. Go check out the book if that's your thing. If you like it, positive reviews on Amazon are great. If you don't like it, then write that down on a felt tip pad in your notebook. Right. So here's what I'm going to do today in the next 23 minutes. You can take some questions, type in some questions. I'll see if I can see them in the comments, but I might not. We'll have some time, I think, for comments at the end. What then is it that I do? I'm Senior Data Evangelist at Tableau. That actually boils down to this. What I do is to help people see and understand data. It's a mission that Tableau has, and it's one that I very, very dearly hold to my heart. And how do I do that as a senior data evangelist? I create content. My intent is to create content that informs, educates, and entertains, whether that is in book format, appearing on podcasts, blog posts, doing training courses, running video series as Chart Chat, or developing my own YouTube channel. Did this one this week. The answer to this question is no. You are better than ChatGPT at data analysis, but go check that out. And I even get to host crazy keynotes like Tableau's IronViz, where I get to stand on stage in front of thousands of people and help inspire others by showing off the absolute brilliance that is we find in the Tableau community. So it's an amazing job. It is an incredible privilege to be there. How did I get here then? Right now, as I share these ideas, I want to first of all just acknowledge my privilege. I am a cis white male. I had a very good education and had incredibly supportive parents. So I acknowledge that privilege. What I am sharing with you today is the experience I've had, and I can only share that experience with you. And I hope that whatever your circumstances, you will get some useful ideas out of this that you can take forward with you in your own career. So this is how I got to here, being a senior data evangelist. I'm going to take you back to high school when Andy Cotgreave left school at 18 wanting to draw comics for a living. That was my goal. I loved Judge Dredd and the original Infinity Gauntlet series and the Silver Surfer, and I wanted to draw comics. Well, that summer I went to the Arctic, to Svalbard, and spent 6 weeks wandering around the mountains and glaciers. And I decided to pivot instead and went to Edinburgh to do a geography degree because I decided looking at glaciers would actually be more fun. That was a great degree. During that degree, I discovered the internet, and this was 1993. Yes, I'm that old. I know you can't believe it, but I am. So I got into the internet really early. So I decided to pivot and go into software engineering. My first job out of college was as a software engineer with a company called RM, and I was writing packages for elementary or primary school kids. I did some color packages, some word processors, and a spreadsheet package, RM Number Magic. You could build charts in this, so here's an aside. And a lot of the resources we sent to schools encouraged them to press the 3D button to make 3D charts. Now, RM Number Magic was the most popular spreadsheet package used in schools for about 10 years. So I did inflict 3D charts on an entire generation of school kids in the UK, which maybe I should be punished for somehow. I don't know. But it was great fun doing that software. And after 6 years, I wanted to go and try and get in the weeds a little. So I got a job writing foreign exchange software, doing the back-end database development work there. Didn't really love that job, but I learned the database skills. Anyway, they made the company went bust, so I got made redundant and took my bicycle off to New Zealand for a year. And during that time, I wrote articles for the magazines and also worked in hotels as a tour guide for groups of cyclists. Great fun. Now, back to the UK in about 2005, and I got a job with a company called Fast Track or Tech Track, where we would go and interview CEOs of fast-growing companies and then write up reports for the sponsors. There, not only was I doing the research, I also started getting into the Access databases and their company data and spreadsheets. This is where my Excel skills started developing. Now, the boss at this company was a somewhat challenging person to work with. He was always demanding information. And so over time, I realized that I could help the team give him the information by creating in Excel these single-page printable summaries with charts on them. And I could go, hey, Mish, here's your summary. Single-page printed thing with charts on them. I had no idea those things were called dashboards, but that was the beginning of the real data analysis skills. And then in 2007, I went to Oxford University, where I became a data analyst. And in November 2007, I downloaded Tableau Desktop, and that blew everything apart, because that was a piece of software that took all my skills and enabled me to be an amazing data analyst, or to really develop those skills and become a Tableau expert. I got very involved in the early Tableau community between 2008 and 2011. And then in September 2011, I joined Tableau as a pre-sales engineer, then became social media manager, and then in 2016 became Tableau evangelist. So there you go. That is how Andy went from school to February 2023. Why am I telling you this? Well, it's not really about the things I did. It's about the skills I learned. I was an artist, a creative visual thinker. Then I went and did a liberal arts humanities degree, where I learned empathy and research and critical thinking skills. Software engineering taught me how to write code, and I did a lot of user experience design, user interface design, and really picked up how to make things that work for the end users. As the unexciting foreign exchange software, didn't enjoy the software, but I did come out of that knowing everything about databases. In New Zealand, I was writing, I became good at the written word, but also learning how to deal with customers, listening to their needs and ensuring they were having a good experience. At Fast Track, not only the Excel skills, but again, listening to CEOs and synthesizing their challenges and their opportunities and turning those into good research. But Excel skills. And then finally, I became the data analyst. When people ask me, how do I become a data analyst? Some time ago, I would have pointed people to a post by Andy Kirk of visualizingdata.com, where he said, you need to wear 7 hats to be a great data analyst. And each of those hats represents the skills you need. And it was only a few years ago that I actually looked at my own career and realized that these are all the skills I had accidentally done through my career. This is my timeline, but you could pick up these skills in any kind of order to try and accrue as many of these skills as possible. But this is my timeline. And obviously, it's not really that I was just doing art and I was just doing databases and I was just doing Excel. Each of these skills were ones I was working on in parallel, but what you see here is kind of the main focuses. And this is something I really recommend you think of as you develop your data career. You can go deep into 1 or 2 or 3 skills, maybe 1 or 2, and that's something you should be doing. But it's really important to try and keep a broad spectrum of skills. I see Dustin has just shared a link to my newsletter, The Sweet Spot. In that, I try and bring articles and books and podcasts from a really diverse set of skills and areas to people who want to read this stuff, because I think the wider your influence is, the better you will be at data. So I'll also note that if you want to get into data engineering and really the cutting edge of AI, machine learning, generative AI, I didn't accrue any of those skills. You know, you're going to need deeper statistical knowledge and machine learning. I also, although I guess I'm a leader in that I've written books and do a lot of speaking, I don't have management skills, so you would have to pick up those along the way. So that's how I got here. And is it all wonderful? Well, clearly I have this really fantastic job, but I want to let you into a secret. Well, actually 2 secrets. The first secret is I used Midjourney to create some of the this image and some of the others you're going to see in a moment. And I'm quite glad that this isn't an artist careers summit, because I'm sure many of you have used Midjourney and it's crazily good. So fortunately we're doing data, and right now that's best done by humans. Anyway, I have imposter syndrome, and this might surprise you. Here I am keynoting a careers summit. Brandi and Dustin obviously think I've got a career that is worth talking about. I've written a successful book. I've got social media followers. I get to host keynotes at huge data conferences. And I suffer hugely from imposter syndrome. Sometimes I'll just see one post or a video or a Tableau workbook and just think, oh, I'm rubbish. How can anybody like what I do? I know nothing. The book came out, and it honestly took me 3 years after the big book of dashboards came out for me to think, oh, it's probably pretty good. So this is an odd feeling. I'm at the same time a confident person, very extroverted, but I also have this little imposter syndrome guy sitting on my shoulder, giving me a hard time. And I think this is important to people early in their careers to understand. It could be something you might suffer from. You might already suffer from it, or you might not, in which case, brilliant. I found as I've begun mentoring more and more people that often they feel intimidated by seeing what more experienced people are doing around them. Now, in the world of Tableau, we celebrate IronViz creators and put them on big pedestals at conference, and because they're showing off the best that Tableau can do. But we're very mindful that sometimes when we share that stuff, is that actually intimidating and off-putting for people at the beginning of their career? So one way I have learned to deal with this is to look at progression of skills. So I'm going to share my own progression as a sort of dashboard and visual designer. Here it is. This is June 2008. That's quite a long time ago. This is the first Tableau dashboard I ever published, and it shows student data in the University of Oxford. Now, it's kind of clunky, but I thought it was great at the time. By the way, Jeremy Anderson has just asked a question about looking back at my career. Will I look in the future? I'm going to come on to that in a few minutes. So that's a great question, Jeremy. But this is the first dashboard I ever built, right? I was really proud of it at the time. 2010, I was getting into public data, and this dashboard was published on the Guardian data blog. Woohoo! I was there, and it shows the routes taken by bikes in the London cycle hire scheme, which were called Boris bikes back then. And now it's still pretty clunky, but you can begin to see I was getting like an idea of flow and story. 2014, at this point, I was working with DataSift, who had access to the entire Twitter fire hose. It was a fantastic data set. And what this is a chart showing all the tweets during the quarterfinals of the 2014 Soccer World Cup. The y-axis shows how long the word goal was in each individual tweet. So this tweet during the Colombia versus Uruguay game was about 138 characters long. It just went, goal! Very excited individual tweeting short. So great chart, bit of fun. But again, you're beginning to see a design style evolve. And then by 2017, I was designing things like this. This is largely the design style I've settled on as my own personal approach. Very simple, stripped back, austere, sometimes with a little bit of visual flair, but nothing too crazy. And, you know, I'm really happy with this design style. It's tweaked a little bit. So the reason I show you these is I must always stay humble, because I must always remember that I was excited when I built that in 2008. So even though there are people who can do things like this and things that are better than this, every single one of us or them who are here started here. And when you are here, this is great. This might seem scary, you know, some of the things you see might seem intimidating, but you will get there by practicing, 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 and practicing. We can talk a little bit on that in a moment if you wish, but practice is so important. Emma Lay asked, how did I find my design style in DataViz? I mean, I kind of find it through evolution, Emma, and in part driven by, I'm actually quite lazy, and it's a bit easier to design things like this than it is otherwise. But even if I do stuff in PowerPoint or any tool now, it always sticks to that design. For me, trying to get the data across in the simplest way possible. I also read a lot about design theory, and that helped as well. Right, so now here comes the career advice. Should you plan your career or should you not plan your career? So somebody who asked this question earlier, let's address this. There are two ways one can plan one's career, and I have, well, you can try the punk approach, which is chaos, or the ordered approach, which is a bit more planned. Let me tell you about the punk approach. And for this, I'm going to take inspiration from a punk fanzine that was published in England in the mid to late 1970s when the Sex Pistols were all the rage. Sideburns. On the second edition of Sideburns, on page 2, they did this. Playing in the band, first and last in the series. This is the A chord, this is the E chord, this is the G chord. Now form a band. Genius, right? Absolute genius. To make a punk band, you don't need to be skilled. You just need motivation, passion, and the bare bones skills. From there, you know, you're involved, you'll be in the community, you'll be learning skills. You might evolve into a great band that will have longevity or not, but at least you're in there. Now, I was made aware of this about 11, 12 years ago when Simon Rogers, who was the data editor at the Guardian blog, at the Guardian at the time, used this to say, this is how people can start their data journalism career. Just start, right? Learn it and just start. So I like to thank about such as this for the data geeks. Is a pre-attached attribute. Width is a pre-attentive attribute. Hue or color is a third pre-attentive attribute. Let's make some charts. This isn't just a great way to get involved in data visualization, but this approach also kind of explains how I did my entire career. That whole map from school to Tableau's data evangelist was a little bit, I know enough, and off I go. I'm going to follow that path. So that's the punk approach that has worked for me. Now let me tell you the ordered approach, because the punk approach hasn't always worked for me. And I want to tell you a little story from 1996. So here I am, circa 1996. Look at this fine young man trying to dress a bit like Chandler Bing and Friends, and whoa, what was going on with that hair? Anyway, I was in my first job, and they sent me on some graduate training, and something happened on that training that has stuck with me throughout my career. The trainer was talking about career planning, and we did a short meditation, and then he said, take a big piece of paper and draw where you are in 20 years. All right. So I was chilled, I relaxed, and I drew something like this. I mean, this is mid-journey doing a really sweet job, but I drew people surrounded by lakes and mountains. I was really pleased. And then I looked around, and I kid you not, everybody else had drawn money, cars, and houses. And this was really weird. This was really, really weird. What was it that was different about me from everybody else? The instructor then went on to tell us that the most successful people in life, have a career plan. And they look at it every few years. The 22-year-old Andy in that room looked at my mountains and everybody else's cars and thought, nah, I'm not doing that. I want to focus on this, and I'm going to follow my chaos route. And that worked incredibly well. As we've seen, my plan enabled this portfolio career that created a big rainbow of skills. And that's awesome. But 4 years ago, I found myself in a rut. I wanted a promotion. I'd been evangelist for about 4 years at this point. I was struggling to find direction and I wanted a promotion. I was getting more and more frustrated. No matter what I did, I didn't feel like I was getting recognized for my contribution. And it wasn't until my mentor, who was about 10 years older than me, pointed out that, Andy, you don't have a plan for this stage of your career. How could your managers measure you or promote you if you cannot articulate to them what you want to achieve in your career? And that was really profound. So I wrote a plan, and a plan that was probably going to guide me to the end of my career. And then it was a very, very constructive 12 months working with, not in conflict with, my manager, and I got promotion and an evolution of the role. Oh, so what does that mean? It's really interesting, right? Because what is my advice to those of you who are right at the start of your career? The 51-year-old that you're speaking to now says, I have learned that writing down and thinking about your future is a really clever thing to do. It gives you a sort of a benchmark against which you can look in 1 year or 2 years and just think, am I on that path? Do I want to be on a different path? You don't have to stick to that list, just writing something down. But I know that if my 22-year-old self is in this audience, the 22-year-old self will be going, nah, Andy, what do you know? I'm going to do it this way. So I cannot tell you which is the right way to plan or not. I can tell you both of these have worked at different parts of my career, and I'm sure both of these could work at any stage in any career. But they are both alternatives that may or may not succeed for you. All right, so we're coming to the end. I've probably got time for a question or two. Before I get on to those, we looked at those 4 things. I just want to thank Brandi and the team again. Thanks so much. I hope you have a really fantastic day. Here are various things you can do to follow me or engage with me, and I hope that has been good. And I want to hear some questions. And Dustin, your name just completely disappeared.
No worries. Thank you so much, Andy. What an amazing story and journey. I think, to summarize some of the comments that I saw in the chat, I mean, I think folks appreciated just your style of presenting everything in a very straightforward and easy to understand way, and a really honest perspective on your path in the field. So saw lots of good comments around that. We do have time for a question or two. I think, Andy, you wanted to address, was it Jeremy's question?
Yeah, so Jeremy asked, looking back at the career, how far out in the future do you plan? I mean, I think I've now got a roadmap. I did actually write a list when I started Tableau. I did write down a list of 10 things I thought I could achieve at Tableau, which was a bit like that. So right now, I'm looking fairly accurately the next 2 or 3 years, but I feel like I've got 2 or 3 paths. And then there's a bit of a goal. But now there's an age at which I can retire goal. How many of you are thinking, what? I'm miles and miles and miles away from that. Well, you'll be like me one day.
Awesome. And then another good one here, I thought. They asked Data Career Summit, but I think who better to ask but Andy Cotgreave, why is the role data evangelist?
Well, that's a great question. So my job is to evangelize, so to spread the passion to see and understand data. Evangelist was Guy Kawasaki was the first tech evangelist. He used to work with Apple. So it's a bit of a West Coast, Silicon Valley job title. Sometimes you see developer relationships. I mean, even CTOs or CDOs are essentially evangelists. But I'm not selling. I'm not marketing. I mean, I am selling and marketing software, but I'm not thinking of it in terms of marketing or selling. I care that people see and understand their data better. And I happen to think Tableau is the best piece of software on the planet to do that. So it's a little matching that works incredibly well.
Love it. All right. And then let's do one more, if you don't mind. Maybe I'll restructure this one a little bit. What was the moment for you, Andy, where you kind of touched on it, but when did you know that data was your career?
I think it was that job before the University of Oxford, when I was just driven to do these single page Excel printouts. And I'm like, oh, hang on a minute. Hang on. What am I doing here? And at some point there or the next, well, some point there is like, this is dashboards and this is the thing. And I was really getting into the Excel community at the point. And I think it was like, right, that's the next step.
Awesome.
So yeah, actually, so to distill that, it's trying to solve people's problems with data. That's a great question. I've never thought about it like that.
Sure. Very cool. Awesome. Thank you so much, Andy, for joining us. Great start to the morning here, but turning into evening for you and for others. Yeah. Thanks so much for sharing. Andy mentioned some of the resources that you can take a look at to follow him and the work that he does. I've continued to share out some of those links in the chat. The last one I'm going to share is actually how you can follow Andy on LinkedIn. He's a great follow, one of my personal favorites. So thank you very much, Andy.
All right, my pleasure. And everybody, I hope you have a great day. And we'll see you all on LinkedIn or elsewhere.
Very cool.
Andy.
Thanks, Andy. All right. Okay. And I am going to go back to Brandi now, who is going to introduce our next session and next speaker.
Thanks, Dustin. Brandi, obviously, really inspirational keynote. Very, honored to have him here. The next segment of our event today is actually something we titled A Day in the Life. And so what we really wanted to do here was help to answer some of your questions around what is a data scientist and what does a typical day look like for somebody who's in that data analyst role, or maybe I'm interested in data engineering. What does that really look like? And so we've collected a variety of people to speak to each of these different roles. So we're going to hear from each of them in the next half hour. They're each going to be able to speak for about 45 minutes. They each get about 15 minutes to speak. And our first speaker of the day is Sunny. I actually had the honor of hearing Sunny speak on a panel about working in the data field, and just was really impressed by her passion that she brings to the job, and just really excited to kind of hear the global perspective that she's about to share with you. So thank you so much for being here, Sunny.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Today I want to share with you a day-to-day for a data scientist. That's my slide. So first about me, I have been working as a data scientist for 5 years now, and first 3 years were spent at LinkedIn as a data scientist. And then for some family reason, I moved back to China 2 years ago and have been working at Kuaishou Technology, which is a short video platform, like another version of TikTok, maybe the domestic version. And for 2 years now. And I heard that we have a wide audience today here. I really want to cover all the questions. So I want to leave a couple minutes in the end for Q&A and just share with you my past experiences, both working in the US and China. So first, what's a data scientist? You can search on Google and get all the formal answers, but I want to put my takeaways here, which is my kind of data scientist philosophy, which is first, problem solver. I believe whatever fancy tools, modelings, or statistical theories you're using, you ultimately are trying to solve a problem. And we are here to support making important and business decisions. And third, the reason I'm highlighting this one, bolding this one, is because this is the value I value the most here, which is scale. I believe that data scientists can scale up solutions. We're not here to just solve one problem. We're here to solve one problem and then scale this up to more scenarios. And then lastly, the ultimate goal of data scientists is to influence people. So what's a day-to-day like for a product data scientist? So what I see for data scientist roles, mostly in big tech companies, we divide people into horizontal and vertical. So if you're a vertical data scientist, you're more likely to support a specific product, or it can be a C2C product or a B2B product. And in that vertical role, you're working with your business partners, maybe product managers or other types of managers to work on a specific product. So take LinkedIn as an example. You see different feature development every day on that on the website, and all little features that you see on the website carry a lot of work behind the scene for data scientists. And for that, for a full product analysis funnel, we typically start with opportunity sizing. So if we want to launch a new icon on the private chat, we need to first see how impact that can make on our users. And once we justify that with some, it can be simple analysis or it can be more complex causal analysis, we come up with a measured or expected opportunity sizing. And then we can help design an experiment, which we call A/B test here, to test out that new design to see if that really brings us the uplift that we expected. And then we also sometimes do not a typical product launch analysis, but more like a regular analysis that discovers why our sessions drop, why our metric A dropped, why our metric, how our metric B can cause an increase in our metric C, and kind of finding the relations between the metrics here. And then another 30% of the time are spent on metric building. This time is more like coding or engineering heavy block, I would say. We usually, once we launch that product feature, we have to come up with metrics that we believe can measure the performance of that product feature in the long term. And for that, we need to help launch the metric flow. And this is all the data engineering work behind the scene that helps productionalize the metric production process. And then 40% of time is usually spent in the communications, meetings, daily stand-ups. It may surprise you as a big chunk of our time, but I have to be honest, that's how time is spent, because a lot of this work, the product analysis or new feature launch, involve a lot of parties in the company that are not just in your team. You would work with product managers or data engineers, or let's see, marketing people. So you have to collaborate a lot with people across the teams. And then of course 10% to ad hoc. And then what's a day-to-day for a horizontal data scientist? I have been working as a product data scientist at LinkedIn, and then later in my time there, I moved to a horizontal team, and then now at Question, I'm also working in a horizontal team. In a horizontal team, we are unlikely to support just one product. We are more likely to spend our time with problems that would impact multiple pillars in the company, which include experimentation platform, which is all the A/B test analysis we look at in the tech company. We use a we use a indoor experimentation platform. So that platform needs data scientists behind the scene to evaluate the methodology, to develop new features. And then economics. Economics may seem a little weird here, but it's actually a tool or a methodology measuring different pillars in the company that may cannibalize each other in nature. So take an example, if someone sells milk and then they sell yogurt at the same time, they are worried that the two products may cannibalize each other, and the same may happen in a company with two teams. So for that, usually very big companies usually hire a economics team to kind of looking above the two teams and find a fair ground to measure how do we measure the trade-offs here. And then lastly, the data productivity tools. This is usually more engineering focused, I'd say. We usually have maybe only very big companies have the luxury to grow a team like this, to build internal tools helping data analysts or data scientists to do analysis or statistical analysis more easily. And then the time here is usually 60% on long-term development or maintaining existing workflows. And then again, 30% of time is spent on communication. As I kind of touched upon in the beginning, that I believe data scientist is a problem solver. In order to solve a problem, you always have to communicate a lot with your upstream and your downstreams, with your business partners. And then, lastly, on-call work and ad hocs. And lastly, I want to lightly touch upon the career track you may expect as a data scientist. And to say in 5 years is because I have worked in the area for 5 years. I don't know what's happening after that. And I'm not saying you have to finish all this in 5 years. I want to introduce you kind of the different stages I view as a data scientist growing in their career tracks. First, you enter as an entry-level individual contributor. In this level, you're expected to deliver, of course, but you are not really responsible for finding new areas to explore. You are usually accompanied by your manager to communicate with your business partners, and then as you work more and collaborate with your business partners more, you may feel more comfortable working alone and taking projects independently. In this stage, you're expected to take your own deadlines. To put it more specific, you have to communicate and manage your business partners' expectations and tell them what it needs to take to finish a certain request. And you need to deliver on your own and take the risk that follows. So once you kind of achieve this stage of working status, you're kind of in the senior level. And then once you work in the senior level for about a few years, and then you start to put more of your thinkings into work and kind of give suggestions on what the team can do going forward, or find new areas to explore. You're kind of getting a foot in the door for staff level, and at this level, you're more expected to kind of scale your work up even more to support more questions and scenarios. I hope I didn't exceed the time here. And do I still have time for questions?
Yeah, you've been great, Sunny. Thank you so much. I think we probably do have time for a question or two. Dustin, I know you've started a few. If you wouldn't
For
mind,
sure, yeah. Let's take one or two. So here's a good one, Sunny. So how did you get started in your career as a data scientist, and what advice would you have for someone who is just starting out?
How did I start? I don't know. I think it's a cliche or a standard one. I graduated from a master's degree and then I interviewed and I started my career from there. And the advice I would give is actually make sure that you are interested in it. Don't get away by the old hypes around data science. Only if you are really interested in the data and you can't pour yourself for dinner when you trying to train a model, when you really want to tell a story from a problem, a big data set, that's when you know for sure that you won't get dull with data science. So yeah, my advice would be make sure that you like it.
I love that answer. And I think it's really important for participants to, hear kind of the summary of what she said. I mean, the first was she just jumped into it, and I think, you don't have to get too concerned. There's a lot of questions flying about like having all the right skills. And we'll talk about that later in the summit. But, she jumped right in and then she made sure that it was something that she really liked. And I think that if you do really like being in the field, you're going to know it and your work is going to reflect that.
Yeah, I think just to chime in, I kind of love the idea that like a good metric of whether you're really passionate about the work is if you can't pull yourself away for dinner. Like I think that's a really good just measuring stick.
Okay, we'll take one more. We're making pretty good time. So Steve asked, data science is a broad field. For someone new to the field and trying to get a job, what is your suggestion on balancing the broad and depth of skills? So I think Steve's asking, it can be overwhelming to see all these skills that are out there and all the buzzwords around them. What's your thoughts on, finding that right balance? Because you can't learn them all, right?
Totally. It's a really, really good question. I think of data science as more front end and back end. So you can choose between the spectrum. And if you're more front end, you're more working with the people who are working on the products and designing features or launching new features. So in that, you need to move quickly with data. You may not get the luxury of practice all your modeling you learned from school, but you need to really understand what the context is, what the product is about, what's really the business need here. And then going backwards to back end, that's where you get the luxury to do the fancy stuff, building models or fancy analysis, but then you are away from business. If you enjoy that, then that's your position. That's where I find most interesting too. So in that position, you may not feel you always make impact in the business. You may not always find the satisfaction, but you work for a month or so and then build up something that can scale up to the company, and then that can support the people in the company, which I find quite satisfying.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sunny. Again, really appreciate you sharing your time with us. We know it's late where you are, and also there were a lot more questions for you. I'm sorry we couldn't get to all of them. But if you want to study, you're welcome. I'm sure if you want to join the event afterwards, watch the recording and answer some of these, folks, I'm sure would love to hear from you. So
For sure. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for reminding me today.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Next up, so obviously you just heard from Sunny talk about a typical, or her experience as a data scientist. Next up, we have Jenn Schilling, who's going to be speaking to you all about her experience as a data analyst. I don't think I've ever met Jenn in person. I feel like I know you really well because we've networked online through the Data Book Club, through the Women in Data Viz groups. I know I follow you on like LinkedIn and Instagram. So apologies for any stalking behavior that might have. But I've just been incredibly impressed with your thoughtfulness and your insightfulness, and just really glad to have you here today. Thank you for speaking to all of us.
Oh, thank you so much, Brandi. And thanks, Brandi and Dustin, for having me. And thank you all for being here. I'm so excited to get to be part of the Data Career Summit and also to talk to you about my experience as a data analyst. So I don't have any slides to share. I'm just going to talk through my experiences. Please feel free to put some questions in the chat, and hopefully we'll have some time at the end for that. First, I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I got here. So my educational background, some of the different jobs that I've had, and then I'm going to talk about my typical day-to-day currently. Right now, I work as a senior research analyst at the University of Arizona. That's my primary job, and that's what I'm going to talk about in terms of my day-to-day. So I studied math and minored in computer science, and then I got a master's in a branch of applied math called operations research. And operations research is all about optimization and simulation and modeling, as well as some statistics. While I was doing my undergrad degree and my master's degree, I did a bunch of different internships. And one of the things I love about math and about data is that I can work in a number of different industries. And that's what I've done. When I had my internships, I worked in space science. I worked in defense work. I worked at NASA and did food price indices, which was really fascinating. I also worked in the supply chain. And so I got to experience a lot of different industries and kind of experiment and see what I liked. And then in my full-time career, I've again worked in a few different industries. I started out in supply chain, and then I worked in advertising and marketing research, and then I now work in higher education. And along the way there, actually between my time as a statistician working in advertising and market research, and now where I work as an analyst for the University of Arizona, I actually took a little break from doing well, I was still working with data, but I wasn't working necessarily specifically as an analyst. I worked for a brief period of time with AmeriCorps and worked on college access. And then I actually taught middle school for 2.5 years. And so I got to teach 6th graders about math and applied math and do hands-on learning with them. And then I did 8th graders with engineering. And so that was really cool. And then I got to come back into the data field. And my background in data actually really helped a lot when I was teaching too, because there's a lot of data in education. Like we've got to track grades, we've got to track performance, attendance, like all kinds of stuff. So I guess all of that to say that there's a lot of opportunities in the field of data, and that's what I really, really love. And I saw some questions in the chat about like, how do you figure out like what specific industry to get into or what specific thing to follow? And I really think it's about what you're interested in. And so for me, I really found that I had a passion for education, and working in supply chain, working in advertising, those were wonderful jobs, and I worked with wonderful people, but I didn't feel very passionate about those things. And that's fine. You don't have to feel super passionate about your career, that you can have passions elsewhere in your life. But I really wanted to find that passion in my career. And so getting to apply my data skills in education where I work now is fabulous. So let me tell you a little bit about what I do now. Oh, one other thing I wanted to mention about kind of how I got here, because there were some questions about skill building that I saw. So I built skills both within my educational background and within on the job. For example, I didn't learn SQL until I got on the job, and now I use a lot of SQL, but I've built up my experience over the years through my different jobs. Also, you can practice outside of work, right? I really, really enjoy R just for myself. I guess it's for me, making graphs in R is like what Sunny talked about, where I'm like, I'm going to miss dinner because I'm trying to figure out this graph and I really want to get my visualization done. So there's lots of things that you can find outside of work as well. There's lots of data challenges like Tidy Tuesday for R, Makeover Monday for Tableau. There's an organization called Viz for Social Good, where if you want to work with nonprofits and help them visualize their data, it's unpaid. It's a kind of data challenge, but that's another really cool way to build skills. And there's lots of those. Those are just three. But that's some ways that you can kind of build up some skills and also build a portfolio, especially as it seems a lot of people who are posting in the chat are thinking about transitioning. So that's a way where you can build some skills outside of maybe your regular work, and you can build a portfolio of some of the different data tasks that you can do. So now let me talk to you about some of the different things that I do in my current job as an analyst. One thing that I do is data request fulfillment. So at the university, one of the ways we get data requests, there's lots of ways, but the one that I focus on is at the university, professors apply for grants for their research or for programs. And sometimes they need data about the institution. So they need data on the number of students in specific degree programs and whether they came back for a second year, whether they graduated in 4 years, things like that. So I help support those data requests by providing, or support those grants by providing data for those professors. And so they can put those into their grants. And to do those, I use a combination of SQL, R, and Excel. And those are kind of the technical tools that I use. And then another really key part of that is communicating with the clients and understanding their data needs, and also understanding and helping support their data literacy. And do they know what they're asking for? Because sometimes they don't, because it's kind of complicated. Data is complicated, especially data at a university. That's something I learned when I transitioned to working for the university a few years ago. Data at the university can be very complicated. There's lots of different ways to define things. It's not as easy as we sold this many units and we purchased this many units and then here's our net revenue. And so there's lots of different ways to count students. I mean, not to say that there aren't different ways to count things in other fields, but what I have found working at a university is that we have lots of different ways to count students. You have to be very specific about how do you want to count this population and what do you mean by a 1-year retention rate? I know what I mean by that, but what do you mean by that? So there's a lot of translation, I think, that happens in the data careers. I'm trying to keep a glancing on the chat, and I did see someone ask if I could repeat some of the data challenges. And I know I speak quickly, so I'm sorry I've said that so fast. The ones that I mentioned were Tidy Tuesday, which is an R-based one, Makeover Monday, which is Tableau-based. And then the other one I mentioned is Viz for Social Good, which you can do in any tool. And that's just 3. There are others out there as well, but those are just the 3 that I mentioned. Another thing that my job entails is creating dashboards. And so I was responsible for creating my university's COVID-19 dashboard. We had a public-facing one and we had an internal one that reported to the senior leadership every night for what our current status was of students who were testing positive, faculty, employees who were testing positive. We were doing wastewater testing, all of this stuff. So I build dashboards like that. I build internal dashboards that have information about faculty salary reports. I've gotten to work a lot on demographics data and diversity data. And so we've been publishing some public-facing dashboards that provide information about the demographics of the students at the institution, as well as the faculty and the staff. And so for that, I use 2 different tools. For all of our public-facing dashboards, I build everything in Tableau. And my university has a Tableau server that we support those on. And then I use Tableau Desktop to build all of them. And then the other tools that we use, Oracle Analytics Server, and that is our internal BI tool. I haven't come across very many people who use that as a BI tool, but that's the one that we use at our university. And so we have 2 different business intelligence or BI tools that we're using there to build out dashboards. Another part of my job is building out reports. And so these are more kind of PDF reports that we generate once a year, showing some information about a specific area. So one is that we're doing a report on sponsored research at the university. So we are looking at how many people, like how many grants are we getting in? What funding are we getting in? What proportion of the faculty are involved with research? Another one that I'm working on right now is going to be our diversity at a glance report, which is going to be showing demographics of students, demographics of faculty, demographics of staff at the institution. And so these are slightly different than the dashboards because the dashboards update regularly. We have to do some maintenance on them, things like that. These reports are an annual one-time, build it out, and then we generate it, and annually we'll update all of the data. Another area that I work in is I do some data science and machine learning projects, and that is, I would say it's kind of typical for an analyst role. It's a little bit unique because I do have a really strong background in applied math and statistics and in data science. So that is a slightly unique part of my role in terms of like a general analyst role. And so there I'm doing things like forecasting enrollment, predicting the net tuition revenue. I've done simulations to impact or to estimate the impact of different scholarship changes. We're doing a text analysis right now on course surveys, and I supervise a graduate assistant who's worked on some analysis to investigate the progress of female students in STEM. And for that, I primarily work in R and use SQL for pulling data as well. I should have mentioned for the building reports, I didn't mention the tools that I use. There I use Tableau mainly for the visualizations, SQL to pull the data, Excel sometimes if we're building out like tables for the reports, and then InDesign too is what I've been using most recently to kind of take all the visualizations and put them all together into a single report. And then I also do some data analysis projects, which require some additional statistical analysis and exploration and experimentation with different graphs and charts. And I just saw a question come in saying, how do you do so many things? That's one of the things I really like about my job is that I get to work on lots of different projects, and I don't do all these things at the same time. This is not like everything I do in one day. For example, last week I was really focused on the data request fulfillment part and data literacy, working with some professors to get their grant proposals supported. This week I have been working on, actually I've been doing some reviewing of some dashboards for people and giving feedback. That's another part that I do because I have an expertise in data visualization and I'm a senior member of my team. I do a lot of kind of support and feedback and training. So I've been doing that recently. So I definitely don't do all these things in one day. I just kind of wanted to give a perspective of the different types of things that I work on. So with those data analysis projects, that requires some statistical analysis and then some different visualizations. So these are things where I did some analysis of looking at what's the relationship between parking permits and employee salaries, because they're looking at evaluating whether or not how we can change parking permit policies to better support people. Also, I really love that somebody said I deserve a raise. I'm going to send that to my boss later. And another thing I do in that area is I got to do a statistical analysis of different academic characteristics of incoming students and their impact on student success. So if a student has a certain GPA coming in, what can that tell us about their success at the university? If they've met certain course requirements in terms of their high school experience, like what does that look like? And so for those kinds of things, I'm using SQL and R as well. And I think I'm getting close to my end of time, so I don't want to go over too much. But I've talked a lot of technical skills, and I just wanted to touch on some of the maybe not so technical skills that are really important for my job. I do a lot of communicating with people about projects, data expectations, prototypes, and that's both with my clients and stakeholders and with my colleagues. I work a lot with my colleagues on I need help pulling this data. Can you check my numbers for me, please? And we do the same, right? Like I look over some of their visualizations and things like that. So there's a lot of support. I work in quite a large department. There's about 50 of us in my department. And so there's a lot of support and working with people on that. I'm not working just by myself all the time. And I really like that. As you might be able to tell, I like to talk. So it's nice to get to talk to people and interact with people. And I really do think those technical skills are important, but it's equally important to be able to communicate my findings, discuss data with people, understand client needs and requirements, and also translate findings into understandable insights and takeaways. That translation is really important both ways. I need to translate what somebody is asking for in terms of what I actually create and what data I provide them. And then I need to translate those findings, that data back to them to help them understand the insights and what they should do from that. Just briefly, a couple challenges that I've run into. I've already mentioned that there's lots of definitions with data. And so I think that that can be a challenge everywhere. I found that that's been a particular challenge working at the university, just that we define things in different ways and people mean different things when they say the word retention. And so it's really important to get clear on, well, what are you actually asking for? And what am I actually providing? And do those match up? Another challenge is data literacy of people requesting the information. And again, that's due to some of those complex definitions, but helping make sure that the people who are consuming our data understand what they're looking at. It's also challenging to sometimes figure out the right data source and figure out how to validate it against a known data source, making sure I'm using the right information. That's just because we have so much data, and we have some data experts, but we need to we're working on how do we document all of that out so more of our analysts can access that information without having to go through a few specific people to be like, what does this column mean? And is this the right one to pull? And so those are just a few of the challenges that come up. So I hope that gives you a little bit of a picture of some of the things that a data analyst does. Again, those aren't everything that I do within one day, but those are a lot of those. That's my kind of general set of tasks that I work on. And thanks again to Brandi and Dustin for having me. Thank you all so much for being here. And thanks for all the questions. I know there were a ton in the chat, so.
There were. And, if I could, Dustin, I hope it's okay. I'm going to actually chime in with one of my own real quick. So obviously, Jenn, you're kind of here to speak to, the data analyst role, but a lot of what you talked about, and you obviously have a background in math and statistics, and I guess I'm curious, do you feel that the data analyst role and the data scientist role are kind of closely related and they can kind of ebb and flow from maybe one to another? Or how do you, what's your thought in the relationship between those two roles?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. I think it depends a little bit on an individual's background and skill set. I will say in where I am right now, we have a data scientist within my department, and they have a very specific role that is different from a data analyst role. I was a data analyst and then a senior data analyst, and now I have this title of senior research analyst, what kind of blends the two, but I'm the only person in my department who has the title of research analyst. So my job, that blend for me, at least and I can only speak to this experience in terms of that, but that is quite, that is unique. I think a lot of the things I talked about are what analysts do in my department: fulfilling data requests, building dashboards, building out reports, maintaining dashboards, communicating with clients and stakeholders, all of that. Really, the unique stuff is more when I work on some of the machine learning models and when I do some of the more kind of statistical analyses. That's kind of the separation that we have, at least within my department. I think some data analysts probably do some more of that statistical work, and maybe the division is more on the machine learning type stuff that kind of stays in the data science area. But yeah, that's a great question. I think there can be a blur between them. There certainly is for me, but again, it does depend kind of on the structure of the organization, and I think on an individual's skill set. And that doesn't necessarily mean that someone couldn't build those skills, right? Just depending on what you want to do too, and what you like doing. Right.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's such a great answer. Thank you. Yeah, I feel the same way. I think you kind of start with, there's so many different variations of the data analyst, right? Yeah. And somebody who's beginning might have a smaller set of skills than, somebody who's been in the field for as long as you have, and bringing that, that research and academic background. So really interesting insights. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dustin, I'm curious if we have any questions that, maybe one additional question that you found particularly compelling?
Yeah, sure. I did want to share just some of the general sentiment. Your experience, Jenn, did resonate with a lot of folks. They thought it was really cool.
I've been really grateful for my experience. That's why I said I like, not that everyone has to go into education and teach for a few years, but I think that the data, what I was saying before about how data lets you do all kinds of different things. If you find a specific industry and you really enjoy that and you want to kind of stay in that industry, go for it. But you can also explore a lot of different stuff. I haven't moved up into a manager role, and part of that, and I have been working, it's been 10 years since I got my master's. And so part of that is because I've moved around so much. And also because I like doing analyst type work. But there's a great opportunity there. Sorry, I think you were just mentioning a comment and then I was like, I'm going to respond. I'm so sorry.
Please do. Yeah, it captured the sentiment of a lot of folks, I noticed. So I wanted to share that. Let's wrap it up with one question that I thought was a good one from Joe. A lot of questions kind of this variety that have been, coming into the chat during Andy, Sunny, and yourself's presentation. So at one point you mentioned being a statistician. How is that different from data science, data analysts, data engineering?
Yeah, that's a good question. And again, and we're going to hear from Justin in a minute about data engineering. And I think that to me, I will see what Justin thinks, but to me, there's less blur there between data engineering and analyst and science than there can be between data science and data analyst. But yeah, so my statistician work, I would say that was mostly actually similar to being a data scientist. It's just the role, the job title was statistician. So in that role, I was running statistical models on survey data and to better support the clients that we worked with in terms of measuring the impact of their advertising campaigns. And so I would say broadly, I was doing data science, but my title wasn't data scientist. To me, that role, my title was statistician, but I feel that it was pretty equivalent to a data scientist type role.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jenn.
Thank you.
For taking time to do this. I know it was helpful to many. I've got, when I look over at my comments since I last pulled up, there's 34 more. So I definitely apologize. I appreciate all of the comments and questions from everyone. We definitely will try to get to as many as we can. To all presenters, not just to Jenn, but everyone, if you'd like to, close out a StreamYard after you're done presenting and go into the event, feel free to address some of these questions in the chat. I'm sure folks would love to hear from you in that way as well.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much, everybody. And everyone, please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. And if you're interested in data visualization or R specifically, that's the stuff that I share. And you can find links to different things that I have available on LinkedIn. So thank you so much to Brandi and Dustin. I really enjoyed being here. So I really, really appreciate the invite to speak. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you very much, Jenn. Cool. Hey, Brandi, can I just share one comment?
Yep.
Will made this comment, and it's a follow-up to Joe's. It says, Data Career Summit. Joe's question is what I love about this Data Career Summit. We get to ask the basic questions and actually get an answer. So that's the reason, Will, thank you for that, of why we, one of the many reasons why we put this together.
Yeah. Definitely.
I did want to just share one update before Brandi introduces the next speaker. So unfortunately, we did have someone in the LinkedIn event, I was made aware, that did spam the LinkedIn event. Definitely apologize for that. This individual, or it looks like maybe a couple, are not in any way affiliated with the Data Career Summit. They were posting a link to some place that was not to the Data Career Summit. So I have reported that to LinkedIn, and I believe have deleted all of them. There was a lot in the event, so I apologize for that. Know that it's deleted. It's reported to LinkedIn. I also posted a comment in the LinkedIn event reminding everyone datacareersummit.com is the only place to go to register for the event. It's not any other links from anyone other than Brandi, myself, or the official LinkedIn page for the Data Career Summit. So sorry to put a downer there, but let's brighten it back up. Brandi is going to introduce the next speaker.
Yes, awesome. Thanks, Dustin. And I think let's be honest. Those types of things happen when we have really exciting events going on, and there's a lot of interest. So thank you all so much for being here, for showing such an interest in this event that we've put together. And let's talk about the next speaker. Justin Hanson is going to be speaking to us about data engineering. Justin and I have known each other for years, and honestly, I was trying to think back when we first met, and I couldn't even nail down a time or like an event where we first met. But no matter what event we happen to run into each other at, we always really share a good laugh. And his experience as a data engineer is really critical to helping people make the most of their data. So I'm really excited to be able to introduce Justin. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Brandi. I gotta pick up the tone now after Dustin's downer there. So really excited to be here. So I am in data architecture and data engineering. So I saw one of the questions in the chat was for Jenn and Sunny of how do you build that trusted data source? Well, that's my world, that's my life. And so I've spent about 6 or 7 years, but the first 6 or 7 years were spent in various data engineering roles. A lot of the back then was called ETL developers. We got a cooler title, and we got an upgrade on the title. Spent 4 years then consulting on helping to build out data platforms, and then I've been spending the last year and a half building out essentially my own platform at a company and using all the knowledge I gained from consulting. So today is really about a little of the day in the life of a data engineer. So at a simplest level, Dustin was talking about the simple questions, the simple answers, right? We heard Jenn talking about delivering analysis. We heard Sunny talk about delivering the features, the ML models. Data engineers, really at the simplest level, they deliver data sets. We feed the data sets that are used for the analysis and the different models. We heard Sunny and Jenn talk a lot about solving specific problems. So a lot of data science and data analysis is focused on what is that business problem? What are we trying to solve? Data engineering often takes it a little bit different, and we're focused on the platform and the system as a whole. So how do we support all analysis, all data science models? How do we help scale out those ML models as a whole? And so with that, we tend to think like a lot of what data engineering actually is. I think we tend to think about we build data pipelines. That's probably the Google answer, the simple thing that you'll see online. Building out things like replication, data pipelines, ELT, ETL, some things like that. We certainly focus a lot on administering the database, monitoring the platform as a whole. I think those are probably the table stakes, what you find reading about it. To take it a little bit further, we do things like build deployment automations, focus on how do we run these data sets, data pipelines against different environments, a dev, a QA, a production. We think about data modeling a lot. How do these data sets or this data domain, how does this relate to the data that a different analysis is doing in a different domain, so we can do cross-domain analysis. So a big part of that is the data modeling. Data quality and data quality testing. How do we build those data quality tests to apply that automation? And then some newer things that have really crept up. Data access security is becoming hot in the market. Who has access to what? So building policies that are associated to that. And then data privacy. So we've heard a lot about, there's a lot of regulation that's starting to creep up. CCPA is a California regulation. GDPR, certainly in the EU has got a lot of buzzword. So building the processes that surround and support those types of regulations. And then as we get into the cloud world, a big focus of that is around managing the cost, the system costs of your cloud. At its core, we're talking a lot about automation. We're trying to support and build the automation that supports those data analysts and data scientists. You'll hear a lot of this is starting to sound a little bit more like software development. I think data engineers start to bridge the gap between that data analysis, data scientist, and software development. 20 years ago, for the last 15, 20 years, we've had a lot of regulatory stuff around software development, SOC 2 audits, things like that. So things like deployment automation, source control, code audits, automated testing, all those things have been around in the software world for a long time now. And those are really starting to come to the data world. Data is starting to become viewed as more mission critical at an organization. And it's being part of now things like SOC 2 audits, regulation. And so a lot of those things that have been in the software engineering world for governance and compliance are now really becoming a focus on in the data world. And so data engineering is really at the core of being able to support a lot of that. So a day to day, what does a typical day look like in data engineering? Typically, I've worked mostly or most closely with the analysts and data scientists themselves. Frankly, I've generally had a bit of a buffer between myself and a lot of those end data consumers. I'll attend presentations to see all the cool data and the cool analysis that was done. But generally, I'm the guy behind the scenes. They're typically focused on the what to build. And often the data engineering behind the scenes is focused on the how to build it, or maybe the how to support what they build. So it's definitely a big partnership within there. Typical day will look like combination of monitoring existing systems, troubleshooting and maintenance of existing pipelines, processes. There's a constant change in our world, so having to do that troubleshooting and maintenance is a big part of it. Building out data sets, certainly, and then building out the automations and of those existing tasks and processes that we had talked about today. We heard some of the other speakers talk about this as well, but so much of the day-to-day is actually not writing code. I think there's the misconception that we just sit and code all day, but we spend much more time talking about the code that we've either written or going to write, rather than actually writing code. So the soft skills in our world are highly underrated. So my personal focus over the last 10 years or so early in my career, I certainly focused on executing and building a lot of those pipelines. Really, I've pivoted and shifted a little bit more towards the focus on the design and the architectures of building out those data platforms that data engineers and analysts and science all code off and build. So I start to think about things really more as an ecosystem as a whole. And what I think is really cool, and Sonny mentioned this a little bit as well, is we're seeing a lot more non-management technical career growth tracks and paths. 10 years ago, it was you were a developer and then you became a manager. Now we have these junior and senior and staff level and principal level that really give you different tracks and different ways to go that doesn't just get you into people management. So how I got here, so my journey was a bit more non-traditional. I think Sonny had the most traditional background of us of going to school and then applying for jobs. Jenn was a little bit more non-traditional, like me with some of that teaching background. I'd be curious. I think we need a Dustin or Brandi survey to really see what the non-traditional or what the backgrounds are of professionals in our world. I actually think from conversations that I've had that it's probably more like a third to a half are non-traditional, which is why I think events like this are really cool to understand how you can get into this without just going to school for a 4-year degree. And so so same for me, I certainly started off, I took a couple coding classes in college and dropped out of coding. I didn't think I wanted to sit and code in my laptop all day. So what a 180 that became. But I got into the data world. I was working at a financial place, and we were in a statement team, our client reporting team. We were in charge of managing the statement processes and making sure all the exceptions were correct. Literally, we'd have to go down to the print room and we'd get an exception report. Like, I kid you not, the stack was about this long. And I remember on month end, we'd be up until we'd be at work at our desk. We'd hand out these exception reports, and it'd be about 5 of us that are all figuring out all the exceptions and going into the system and all this. And so we'd literally be at the office till like 1 a.m. And so that's really what kickstarted my data career. As after that, we're like we're young people, and we don't want to sit here till 1 a.m. So we learned SQL, we learned some VBA, macros automation, and we just started automating everything that we could. I always viewed this, the BI at the time was the shiny thing. I always viewed it as like the analysis and building dashboards. I always thought that was really cool. I always thought that I wanted to get into that world, but I just kept being pulled back into automating more things behind the scenes. And so really just at some point it just kind of stuck, became a passion for me, and I've really enjoyed the automation part of it. I guess you could say I just really never made it to that BI journey as part of my own journey. But I think what the takeaway there is for everyone watching here, that there is no traditional background to get into here. It's really all about how you can take your own experiences and apply it to your next role or your next experience. Anybody that knows me knows that I love talking about culture. I think an event like this, I'd be remiss if I didn't get a little culture talk into here. As it relates to this data world that we're in, the data ecosystem it's so large. It's impossible to know everything, to know every technical thing. the business knowledge of these organizations, the business knowledge that Jenn and Sunny has to know for the analysis and that feature development is just so large that they can't do it themselves, and I can't do it myself on all the technical stuff on behind the scenes. So collaboration is not only critical, it's really the only way to succeed. But still, especially as we're getting started, so a lot of you coming in as trying to figure out how to get started, we build these walls for ourselves, and we think, I'm an engineer, I'm supposed to know this, I'm supposed to know how to figure out them, and we're afraid to ask, we're afraid to look stupid to the next person. And this is where culture really comes in, because the best way to break down those walls, to not be afraid to ask for help on something, is to build relationships with people. Now, you don't have to be best friends and go out drinking after work with them, but I guarantee you that learning a little bit about the person that you're working with will help build that strong relationship with them and help be able to make you ask them a question and make you more approachable for them to ask you a question. I actually think one of the best qualities of senior level developers, engineers, research analysts, data scientists, whatever it is, it's the ones that are most approachable to others. You talked about it. You heard Jenn talking a lot about her passion for teaching. It's that culture, it's that ability to help others in the career. So think about that as you get started, as you get in your role, or as you're in those junior roles, of how you can take the next step within them. All right, so we're at a career summit. I'm supposed to be talking you into this career, so I'm actually going to take the opposite approach. I want to talk people out of this career to start here. So I think data in general is a pretty big buzz right now. There's a high demand for people in our field. There's a low supply. Obviously, it drives up the compensation that we get for it. These are good jobs. But if you're here just for that reason, this is not the place for you. I'll tell you a little bit why. So really, in our world, there's always a growing list of things to do. You're always going to feel like you're behind, that you can't learn enough, that you can't know enough. The learning doesn't stop. I talked to my sister-in-law a lot about this. She's a nurse practitioner. The things that she was doing 10, 12 years ago are still pretty similar to what she's doing now, maybe 80, 90%. There's new things that come into there. The things that I was consulting on 3 to 4 years ago, even in some similar technologies, are completely different than what I'm doing now. And so there's a constant learning that happens to this job. The best engineers and analysts that we have, they do not treat this as just a 9 to 5 go home. They're investing a lot of time in their craft. They're doing side projects, classes, certs. They're staying up to date on their craft. And so there's this never ending set. For Jenn talked about the passion to get into here. If you're passionate, if you can't put our project down to eat dinner, this is absolutely the right career for you. If you are only in it for the 9 to 5 job, this is not a 9 to 5 job. So with that, I've successfully, hopefully, talked some people out of it. Whoever's left is here for the right reasons. Fantastic. That's my 2-minute spiel. What I do love about it, what I truly love about this career, first of all, this is the opportunity. Every company is a tech company. We've heard that before. And really every company, I saw this on LinkedIn the other day, every company is really becoming a data company. Maybe not there yet, but every company is becoming a data company. So the skill set that we have are truly needed by the industry as a whole. That opportunity brings freedom. I think there's a certain amount of freedom that comes with knowing that your skill set are valuable in the market as a whole. And then ultimately, my job is solving a million small puzzles. I love puzzles. I love tinkering. So it's just a ton of fun being able to solve all of those individual puzzles that come away from it. So advice from newcomers. We heard this from some of the others. So first, I think even if you're interested in the data science, the data analyst side, learning more about the data engineering field, learning about some of those things we talked about in the beginning of some of those data pipelines, the data modeling, those things will only help you in your careers as data scientists, data analysts. Sunny, you talked about scale. That was one of the things that she talked about. And so learning how to scale out your models and learning some of the data engineering, frankly, the best data analysts, the best data scientists that I've known also can dabble and hold their own in the data engineering. So I think no matter what field you're getting into, learning a little bit about data engineering is really key and really critical. So, and then especially early on in your career, I think too many people early on, they look at, all right, I can jump ship and get an extra X number of dollars. Don't focus on the money. Focus on the learning, the opportunity, the mentorship. Who are you looking to build? Find opportunities that really focus on that learning, and then build projects. I know Avery Smith is in here. He always talks about this on LinkedIn. The best way to learn what we do is to build. There's only so much you can learn on LinkedIn, on YouTube, reading Medium posts. You got to get in there and build. And so if you're learning this, whether it's data analyst track or data science track or data engineering, you got to get in there and start building something. And lastly, you gotta have some fun. So we spend a lot of time working. The best people that I've worked with, the best people that are culture fits and technical fits, they bring that positivity. They have fun. So that is my spiel. Hopefully we had some fun along the way, and I picked up from Dustin's downer. So
you did great. Always, you always bring that energy. So thank you so much, and for such a unique perspective too. I think particularly, maybe why you shouldn't pursue the role, or maybe pursuing it for the wrong reasons. So I think that's wonderful.
You're on mute.
I'm muted. Yep. I always joke. It's not a, it's not a party in a live event until someone's on mute. I hit it at the 1.5 hour mark. So I was also the first person to hit it in the last event too. So, we'll have to continue the tradition from here on out. But we did have a couple questions. Actually, I thought this was kind of fun. So questions around what you found to be the most difficult part in your journey to becoming a data engineer. There was more than one question on that. What was the hardest part, Justin?
Man, I think getting started. I had this idea when I was first getting started in this world that I needed a degree. I needed to know all this stuff that I had to know SQL and Python and all these different database languages. And so I think it was my own mental block. And the reality is that you need to know some SQL, you need to know some Python, but more importantly, you need to show what you can do. And so that's where I think the learning, the side projects that you're doing are so important, because if you get into an interview, you don't need to have all the data sets. This is where getting into the right company, the right fit, and learning on the job is so critical. But you need to be able to show and showcase what you can do or what you are going to be able to do. And so bringing projects, frankly, the best interviews, I've done a lot of interviewing over the last 4 or 5 years. The best interviews that I've had are the ones that people come on and say, instead of just telling me what they do, they say, hey, can I show you this real quick? And they open up their GitHub, their code, they open up a Streamlit thing or whatever it is, and they actually show off some code. That's absolutely the best way to get in. But I think there's this mental block, at least for me, of getting started in that.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you so much, Justin. There was a ton of questions. So Justin, I know you're a busy guy, and so are all the presenters, but if you want to duck into the chat, into the event, feel free to address some of these others either now or later. But thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And we're going to move on to, Justin called it out that we need to see some of Brandi's data. So Brandi's she's over here. Brandi's going to present some of that data next. Thanks again, Justin.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Justin. And Dustin, thank you for that intro. Let me share my screen here. Right. Okay. So we are running a little bit behind. So I'm going to keep it somewhat quick because we need to be on time for our session at the top of the hour. So I'm going to keep it short, but I also love to post these survey results on LinkedIn. So you can follow me on LinkedIn, follow the Data Career Summit, and you can get more in depth with this information there. So when Dustin and I were brainstorming the theme of this event, I kind of wondered if it would be interesting to take a look at people's personalities. Did a certain personality tend to gravitate towards either specific roles or just the data field in general? So we surveyed a variety of people, asking them to take a personality quiz, and I'm here to share the results. All right, so across more than 200 respondents, some personality types tended to be more common than others. So the most common being the analyst personality type, which is really no surprise. And that falls into that conscientious category of the DISC assessment. But the most common category overall was actually the steady category. That's full of supporters, planners, and stabilizers. Okay, it should be noted that most of our respondents fall into that data analyst role, so these results are kind of skewed in that direction. But when we look at certain roles and which personality types maybe are most associated with them, we can see that those in the steady category actually tend to dominate the data entry role. So a lot of personalities in that steady category actually kind of fall in that data entry role. But you can see too that almost a third, or at least a third, of business analysts, data analysts, analytics engineers, and machine learning engineers all kind of have that personality type. Leaders, on the other hand, have fewer people in that category, right? A much smaller percentage there. When we look at maybe leaders specifically, we can see that 37% of all leaders are actually associated with that dominant category. So it's kind of interesting to see that big yellow chunk in that bottom bar chart there. So those are all of the roles or all the personalities associated with the dominant category, and you can see that it's a large chunk of leaders. Next up, we're gonna actually switch back over to looking at our personality types, and we can see that initiators tend to kind of, or leaders actually tend to make up most of the people in that initiator personality category. Leaders also are captains and architects and drivers. You can see that kind of being reflected, that D category, or that dominant category, kind of taking up a big chunk of that relationship there. But for again, I think there's a lot of people here who are interested in the data analyst role. Obviously, we had a lot of data analysts respond to our survey. So data analysts, when we kind of take a look at the number of data analysts across the different personality types, we can see that we kind of had an overwhelming response from people in those roles, and that the primary or a lot of data analysts tend to be in that questioner personality type, or most questioners are actually data analysts. So kind of interesting to see that breakdown. Again, I'm going to dive a lot more into detail on subsequent posts out on LinkedIn in the coming weeks, because there's a lot of nuances, a lot of information in each one of these charts. So more to explore for sure. I did want to kind of pivot. One of the questions we did ask people was about how much time do you spend in certain activities. So we've kind of explored a little bit of the personality types and maybe what roles are fitting, or maybe what what roles are fitting, or maybe where personalities tend to kind of shine through in certain roles. But I actually want to pivot and talk about different activities that people in the data space engage in. So for starters, we asked about requirements gathering. So you can see, when gathering requirements for a project, there wasn't anything that maybe stood out significantly, right? It tends to be a larger portion of what people in a leadership position, a larger component of that role, but nothing, vastly, like wildly kind of different across the board. When we looked at data preparation or ETL, some of that data engineering stuff Justin was just talking about, you can see that, ETL data prep tends to be a larger chunk of that business analyst, data analyst, and analytics engineering roles. We then go into exploratory data analysis. So this is kind of exploring your data, maybe looking for insights. Again, we see large chunks of that activity in those same 3 roles. And when looking at data visualization, we see that heavily being a large component of what business analysts and data analysts do. Okay. So we can kind of see where those activities maybe are more associated with some roles than others. We do have a few more activities to take a look at. The next one is presentations. When you think about giving presentations as part of your role, what types of roles really do that? We see that, it's a decent portion out of a lot of these roles, and a slightly larger portion in leadership. We then have automation. So for data entry, business analysts, leadership, they don't really seem to be engaged in automating things. But data analysts, analytics engineers, and machine learning engineers do spend time automating things, automating data, pipelines, for example, or reports, or what have you. So not too surprising there. My final slide, we're talking about discussions. So the first thing here is architecture discussions. Who is engaged in those? We're going to see a lot of, or mostly, machine learning engineers or leadership being engaged in architecture discussions. And then finally, strategic discussions. Everybody or most roles are engaged in that, but primarily, again, those machine learning engineers and leadership being engaged in those strategic discussions. So again, this was kind of a quick overview of some of that data that we gleaned. I want to thank everybody who took our survey. It really helps. We're not able to deliver these types of insights without the data. So we will be doing another survey again for our next event. But I will be sharing the details of this on LinkedIn shortly. Apologies for having to rush through that, but I'm really excited to have you hear from Dustin next, where he's going to break down the job market.
For sure. Awesome. Thank you, Brandi. And yes, there were a lot of questions on whether the data points will be shared after the event. I've been recommending everyone follow our LinkedIn page because we will be sharing some of these data points after the event there. So it's Data Career Summit on LinkedIn. Very cool. All right. Thanks, Brandi. I am going to bring Terril, Tyson up on the screen. Hey, Terril.
Hey, Dustin.
Hey, so we're going to walk through very quickly here, 17 minutes, the data jobs report. Also, we'll be sharing these key data points on our LinkedIn page afterwards. So we're going to go quicker than we were thinking, but I'm going to present the data. I'll give you a really quick background on it, but Terril is also going to provide some commentary on what we're seeing in here. So Terril has been someone that I've gotten to be friends with off of LinkedIn. LinkedIn creates real relationships. We've met up via video calls, and it's been fun to see Terril become a manager in the field too. So thanks, Terril, for joining.
Oh, no, hey, glad to be a part of it. I appreciate the invite. This is a great event with tons of great information. So glad to contribute to it.
All right, cool. This is going to be fun. Thanks, Terril. All right, so I'm going to pull up the latest data jobs report. So I presented the last one back at our August event, and I have updated the data since then. Actually, the data is going to be current through February 20th. Quick overview. I started this back in 2019. Why did I start it? I started it because I was a manager at the time in analytics, and things were hitting an inflection point where folks internal to my organization, outside of the organization, were asking me questions like, Dustin, it seems like this data field, is really becoming something. Like, how do I get into it? How do I transition into a role in it? What are the kinds of skills I need to learn? And I really, being a data person, I wanted to get a data-driven perspective on answering those questions. So thus this report was born. And what I do is I've continued this since 2019, every 6 months or so, I collect data on 100 job postings, and these are data analytics related titles. You can see in the final slide in the appendix, I'll share this out on our LinkedIn page as well, the types of titles I'm looking at. But I do want to add that note that these are data analytics related roles that we're looking at. I do want to expand the scope of this report, but a lot of folks do start into data analytics roles when they get into the field. That's what this data is around. Now that the field is growing, we do need to expand the scope of it, but data analytics roles are what we're looking at here. I find these on corporate and major career sites. And I've added the last 100 positions to this last report. We're going to take a look at the results of this right now. But first, I want to take a step back and just share the results from a poll that I put out on LinkedIn a few days ago. And I said, this was kind of for fun. I said, is SQL the top skill in data analytics? We're going to find out and touch on this in a little bit here. But 74% said yes. So we'll see how this pans out. Before I get to the data, I just wanted to kind of cut to the chase here, which is good because we're a little behind on time. But 5 overall trends that I saw are that we have some new functions and new titles gaining steam. So I'm seeing HR and people analytics titles pop up more frequently, as an example. I'm still seeing a lot of skills overall in those 100 postings that I reviewed. We'll take a look at what that looks like, but I'm also seeing some top heaviness to that. I'm seeing a few skills really pop to the top that are mentioned kind of across the board in most of the positions. So I think we want to make sure we know what those are. Industry experience, not always listed as a requirement, but is still, we talked about this at the last session, but is still showing up very, very regularly as a preferred skill. So, in the job section where you see, or in the job posting where you see, ideal candidate would have this preferred skill. Industry experience is listed on there. Data storytelling. Cole, who authored the Storytelling with Data series, opened our last Data Career Summit, the keynote around storytelling with data. Well, data storytelling is kind of emerging as a new skill category. We'll talk a little bit more about that. And we're actually seeing, this is probably going to be bad news, another downer. I guess I'm bringing some downers to the event today, but trying to bring an honest perspective. Fewer positions are offering remote work options than what we saw last time, which is actually the opposite of what we thought was going to happen. So I'm going to start with the preferred skills. So there's a section that shows usually required skills and then preferred skills in a job posting. I put a word cloud together to show all of the preferred skills that were mentioned in this last report. Bigger the text, the more times it was mentioned in job postings. You can see industry experience pops out really heavily.
And Dustin, just to add into that real quick, I know we are moving at a speed light pace, but industry experience, that's a huge thing that's preferred, because if you think about it, that really just means more opportunity for people who are trying to get into it. Dustin just mentioned more industries are getting involved: HR analytics, people analytics, restaurants, different industries are getting involved in the data game, which means there's more opportunities that your industry experience will easily translate. So if you worked at a restaurant forever and now the restaurant is saying, we want to be data driven like Netflix and Google, well, you have the industry experience. You'll know kind of what they're looking for. So the fact that this is a preferred skill is a great help if you're looking to transition, because you may have more to offer than what you may think.
For sure. Love it. Thank you, Terril. Moving over to the required skills. So I put together similar word cloud, but just on the required skills. So, when you go into job posting, you also see what's required. These are the hard skills. All of them mentioned in this last report. There's a lot of them, 137 unique ones, actually. But there's some that pop to the top, and we're going to add some context to that word cloud by taking a deeper look at it. If I was actually just to chart them out and take a look at how many times each hard skill mentioned was mentioned, you can see that there's 10 or 11 here that I've got highlighted that really popped to the top, some in kind of the medium range, and then there's a long tail down here. There was 490 total mentions of hard skills across the 100 positions I looked at. 137 of those were unique. But if you take a look at this is something to really keep an eye on. 75% of those of the skills that were mentioned, 75% of these unique skills drove only 25% of the total mentions. So what we've got is these skills up here at the top being mentioned pretty frequently across the positions that I looked at. And then you've got some positions that are listing out some really unique ones. In some cases, maybe even up to 20 skills on a posting. But we really want to make sure we stay focused on these top skills, especially if you're looking to transition to or get into the field. Terril, I'm curious, do these top ones that we see mentioned most frequently, do these resonate with you? Is it what you would expect to see?
Most definitely what I would expect to see. I think, we talk a lot about hard skills and the tools, and so it's great to see which ones are kind of the most important ones. SQL, Excel, and then Tableau or Power BI, right? Which really just comes down to using visualization to visualize what you're finding. So this definitely aligns. I mean, even my team personally, the team that I run, we mainly use SQL, Excel, and Tableau. Those are the three tools we use the most consistently, and those are senior analysts who are using those tools, right? So not even just entry-level roles, but your mid to senior roles that are utilizing those three main skills, whereas some of those other ones we may not even touch. So focusing on that top part of this chart, the SQL, Excel, Tableau, Power BI, it can help you a lot into getting your foot in the door, but even moving forward, because those tools alone can get a lot of the work done in the analytics space.
For sure. Totally agree. Had similar experience myself. All right. Now, looking at it slightly differently yet, if we were to take the skills that we saw pop and then look at what the trend over time is in terms of how many times they were mentioned in job postings, what we're looking at here is the percentage of postings in each report that contained a given skill. And so when we start with SQL, which was the number one skill, so, the folks that answered yes to that LinkedIn question that I put out, that poll question, they were right, at least from a data analytics related, job title standpoint. SQL did appear most frequently. In fact, in this last report, it appeared 52% in 52% of the positions. So 52% of the positions that I reviewed for this last report had SQL mentioned as a required skill, and that's up 20% since the first half of 2020. So over the last 3 years, there's a 20% increase in terms of the positions requiring SQL. And then we'll burn through these really quickly. Excel actually flipped to number 2. It was number 3 last time. Terril and I were talking before the summit about, I mentioned that I had created a series of Excel tutorial videos at one point in my career. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to stop doing this because I think these data visualization tools are going to take over. Well, I was wrong. In the last three years here, we've actually gone from 20% of the data analytics positions mentioning Excel as a required skill to 37%, continuing a long-term upward trend. Tableau and Power BI are the next ones. No surprise there. So 2 data visualization tools. Stats, general statistics knowledge mentioned in a variety of different ways in 23% of position postings. Python and R, 19 and 16%. Now that would look different if we were looking at, data science roles, machine learning roles, things like that. But these are data analyst positions. So still about a fifth of them, a little bit less, looking for Python and R experience. Industry experience, this one has trended down a little bit as that industry experience has shifted over, as we just saw, to being a preferred skill. So shifting a little bit away from required to preferred. My take on this is companies are looking for the hard skills, the true technical skills first, and then definitely liking it if you've been in the industry, that they're recruiting within. So for example, if you know SQL, Excel, Tableau, Power BI, and stats, and you're in the financial services industry, and you want to apply for a financial analyst position, if you've got that experience and you've got some of these technical skills that they're looking for some in-depth financial analysis using data visualization tools and things like that, it's only going to help that you have the industry experience. And then a new skill category down here, inserted this into the report, data storytelling has actually been popping up as a formal hard skill requirement in more and more positions. And in fact, it was actually mentioned in some way or another, storytelling with data, data storytelling in 12% of position postings. So new skill category created. PowerPoint, about 10%. We're going to take a look at what happens if we group those together. Project management, and then other data visualization tools. What I wanted to do was show what the top 3 would be if we actually combined all those data visualization tools together, because there's a lot out there. And the SQL is still obviously number 1 at 52%. But if we combine all the data visualization tools together, so if we take Tableau, Power BI, and any of the other data viz tools that are mentioned, there's actually 47% of the positions mention some type of data visualization tool as a requirement. And actually, you'll notice that if you add up to 34, 24, and 6, that doesn't add up to 47. So what's happening is we're actually seeing multiple data visualization tools on some of the job postings.
And Dustin, this really, not to cut you off there, but it really makes sense then that data storytelling is increasing, right? Because if visualization is a bigger thing, we're showing what's happening. Well, now you have to explain what it is, right? Right now you create some beautiful charts, some beautiful visualizations, right? But what are we doing? We're now explaining, we're telling the story of the data. So as visualization increases, you can imagine that storytelling will also increase, which again just means that's just good communication skill. We're seeing that these skills that are required are much more accessible than what it may feel. It can sound scary. You see these skills. I don't know if I can learn code. I don't know if I can do this. I'm older and I'm starting late. But you can tell a story. A lot of people tell stories. And that's really what it is understanding the information and then presenting that in a clear, concise way to help people understand what's happening and what actions to take afterwards.
Totally. Yeah, that is a great point. Just to show it real quickly, the top 5, if we combined PowerPoint and data storytelling, like Terril was just talking about, here's the top 5. SQL, and then again, combining all the data viz tools into one. Data viz is number 2. Excel is number 3, stats number 4. And then what sneaks in is actually 21% of positions mentioned either PowerPoint or data storytelling or both. And so the data storytelling data point came in there in this last report. So we've got, getting the data up here. And I think this is an important distinction, for those that are learning about kind of what do all these things do and what do all these things mean. But with SQL, we're getting the data. You can get the data using SQL. Data visualization in Excel. You can create a story with those two, right? Same thing with stats. It helps create the story around the data. And then here you're telling the story. So we're getting the data, we're creating an analysis, we're drawing out insights, and then we're telling the story with it. And that's what I see in these top 5.
Nope, I definitely agree with you, Dustin. That's where communication is key. And working on communication skills, which is a soft skill, is really where the hard skills now will get the power. Because if we can't tell people what the data is saying, it doesn't have the same impact. And impact, of course, is how you continue to progress forward in your data job and your career and stuff.
Absolutely. Okay, so I've got 2 minutes left on this session. I'm going to go through these very quickly, and then we will share these out to the Data Career Summit LinkedIn page. Here, I created a little heat map here of the skills mentioned by the seniority of positions. So we've got the skills we were just talking about, the seniority of the position that listed them, and how frequently they were mentioned given the seniority level. SQL and data viz, pretty consistent throughout. Excel is really common in entry-level roles. Industry experience tends to creep in as a requirement as you move up into more senior roles. The general stats and stats tool knowledge was relatively consistent throughout. And just another call out is that I excluded management purposely from some of the previous views because it's only specific to the more senior roles, but many manager and director level roles do require it. So that's a consideration. If you want to be in one of those senior roles, you might want to think about how you can start to lead a team directly or indirectly now. And then I did put together a similar heat map around degree requirements by the seniority level. You can take a look at that when we publish it out after the event. Also, the years of experience that were asked for based upon the seniority level. About 2 years on average for an analyst position. Now, there were many positions that were 0 or 1. This is just an average. And then there were some that were 5 and so on. Average was 2 years. For a management or senior analyst role, it was around 4 to 5 years experience. and then 7+ for director role. But the one thing, Terril and I were talking about this, this isn't this isn't really that many years between analyst to director level. So something to keep in mind if you're starting out. Positions that don't require a degree overall across all the positions I looked at, it was about 31% this last time. That did dip slightly, but is still up above the pre-pandemic level. If we think back to the last summit, we saw 48% of the positions in the data set had a remote work option. And I asked a question in the chat, what percentage of those do we think are going to have a remote work option when we come back together today, right now? The crowdsourced prediction was 60%. So when I put that question out, everyone thought this was going to 60%. I'll admit, myself included, I thought the trend was continuing. Did you, Terril?
We all did. We all thought it would.
Right? There was just a lot of momentum around this. What happened in reality? In reality, it actually dipped to 34%. And a lot of reasons for that. There's a lot of commentary out on LinkedIn and social media about this. I did expect now to see this with the hindsight, benefit of hindsight. But unfortunately, quite a dramatic dip for those that want remote roles, but still a third. And there were a lot of hybrid options out there. A lot of discussion we can have on that. The last thing I will touch on is a new part of the data jobs report is salary ranges for positions. So one thing that's been a trend in the last couple of years here are states requiring salary ranges in some cases to be posted on positions. 47 out of the 100 positions that I surveyed in this last roughly 6-month period had a salary range on it. And what I did was I put on a little scatter plot here, the low and high end of that salary range. And then what I did was I also colored the dots based upon whether it was kind of a lower seniority role or a higher seniority role. And for the manager level roles or above, the range looked like this: 112K on the low end, 190K on the high end. On the analyst side of things and senior analyst side of things, 85K was the average on the low end, 139K on the high end.
And that's why I know we have to wrap up, but just to
go ahead, Terril, please.
With this, what's really cool about all of these charts, it really shows the progression that you can have in the data space. So if you combine this chart with the chart that we just saw in regards to the average years it takes to move forward to a new position, that aligns with the salary expectations here. So within a very short period of time, right, you can start at a very high floor. We see their low end for analysts at 85,000, which is a great floor. Everyone wish that was their floor. That's a fantastic floor. But then the entry to actually move forward isn't that long, but the ceiling is much higher. And that's incredible stuff. I mean, I think this whole data jobs report, if I was to say one giant message, it shows that it's possible to enter the field and it's possible to do well in the field. So if you are thinking about transitioning, trying to transition, or already in it trying to move forward, don't feel that it's impossible, that it's a ceiling you can't break through, because in reality, this report really shows how accessible it is for you to kind of keep moving and progressing.
Totally agree. Thank you, Terril, so much for joining this abbreviated session. Tons of data. We could probably talk, Terril, you and I, for hours about this.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, I think we talked for like 45 minutes. So
we've got a long time.
If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. Follow Terril on LinkedIn as well. He's just a great guy to get to know and follow. And I'm sure would be glad to help address questions along with me. Yeah, very cool. All right, thanks so much, Terril.
Hey, thank you, Dustin.
Yep, take care.
You too, bye.
Okay. I'm gonna bring Brandi back up really quickly. Hey, Brandi. Sorry, I didn't mean to scare you. Cool. All right. So we're gonna move on to the next session. And this one we are super excited about. So this is a totally new addition to the Career Summit. What it's all about is actually showing folks kind of 3 different actual real companies that are out there that are investing in data, and letting folks from those organizations talk about what data science, what data analytics looks like at their organizations, how they're investing in it, what you might want to be thinking about if you want to work in a data role at their company. So we're calling this a group informational interview. We're pretty excited about it. We have 3 really good companies joining us for this. So the first is going to be Northwestern Mutual. And so we're going to have Anju Gupta as well as Mark Zachar join us from Northwestern. So I'm going to go ahead and bring both of them up onto the screen. Hello there. Welcome, Anju. Hi there. Hey, Mark.
Hey, Dustin.
Hey there. Awesome. I am going to turn it over to both of you, and we can get started. I know it's 11:05, but feel free to take the full 10 minutes. We'll cut a little bit off the end.
Sounds great.
Perfect. Hi, Anju.
Hey, Mark, how are you? And one
Very
thing I
good.
was thinking, going back to what Dustin said, is you'll never be able to see what data science does. It's always about feeling the data science.
That's right. So, Anju, I'm excited that we get to have this chance to have like a dialogue and give folks in this incredible summit. Like I've learned a lot already, and we'll have this dialogue and get to shed a little light about how a large company like Northwestern Mutual handles data science and analytics. And so I want to start by giving you a chance to introduce yourself. You've had an incredible career, earning your PhD in genetics and statistics from The Ohio State, then enterprise car rental, Monsanto, Syngenta, and then with a variety of roles from global analytics and model deployment, tech strategy, partnership, sustainability. And so from your perspective, why Northwestern Mutual? Why fintech right now for you?
Yeah, no, great question. Yes, I have, changed the industry vertical over the years, past 2 decades, but the data science has always stayed consistent throughout, especially starting out from the degree that I graduated to where I am now with Northwestern Mutual. And the question is, why Northwestern Mutual, right? Because there are many other companies out there. Everybody is doing data science now. It's become the DNA by which we survive and we excel as well. So when I think about Northwestern Mutual, especially the fintech industry, the industry in itself is transforming massively. There's way we did things in the past, and then there's way that we are going to do things in the future. Think about underwriting, right? There's tons of manual underwriting that used to happen before. And now there are processes and things in place or models in place that you can put into production by which you can underwrite automatically. So insurance industry hasn't caught up a whole lot of progression that has been made within the data science space, and felt like the right opportunity to be able to be part of an industry where you can come in and be a part of transforming the industry as well. So I'm very excited about here. Northwestern Mutual, again, it's a 160-year-old legacy company, but has definitely, I've been here for 2 years, and I'm every day amazed by the intensity by which there's a re-energized focus on how we implement data science across all of the work streams within NM. And Mark, you have seen firsthand for the last 2 years, and you have seen the transformation.
Yeah, I came in just before you, and it's been there's been a lot of talk about passion today, and I feel like we have that passion at Northwestern Mutual. We were from our financial representatives to our home office. We have lots of people that are very passionate about data, about providing the very best results for our clients, and so I'm very grateful to work for some place where everyone brings their passion every day, and we have an incredible culture.
Yeah, and to that point, Mark, it'll be great. You and I work together with Jonathan Stark as well around the Northwestern Mutual Data Science Institute. Do you want to give our audience a little bit of sneak peek on NMDSI?
Yeah, so I've had the privilege of helping build the Data Science Institute over the last couple of years here. And we've had some great impact over the last five initial years. We have 3 pillars, and we're trying to make waves in the tech ecosystem here in Milwaukee and regionally. And so one is on research. So I think we already have talked about that. We can't do everything, and so we need to have faculty and students helping with some of the data exploratory work that we can't handle in-house. And so it's really been terrific to leverage faculty and students to do some of that work. So we have a research pipeline. We also have a talent pipeline where we've doubled down on growing our internships, breadth and depth there, and in all kinds of talent in the region, whether it's data science or data engineering and software engineering alike, with new courses and programs at UW-Milwaukee and Marquette, and then leveraging like opportunities like this. I really feel privileged to Dustin and Brandi for inviting us today and allowing us to contribute to this conversation. And then finally, I have to mention our community pillar. There's some really great nonprofits in Milwaukee that are doing great data work for each other. The Data You Can Use team, huge shout out to them. We have project-based learning experiences happening with capstones at UW-Milwaukee and Marquette. And we have a monthly speaker series. So I'll throw it in the chat when I'm done, but follow us at nmdsi.org. And we'd love to have more folks get involved with building this ecosystem. So same question back to you, Anju. Those were my highlights of the last 5 years of helping with the NMDSI. What have been your biggest accomplishments in data science and analytics at Northwestern Mutual over the last 2 years you've been here?
Yeah. And the way I would answer this, there's a question in the chat coming up around what are the top use cases of ML. So we use machine learning at a fairly high intensity within NM for the last 2 years. And some of the use cases at high level is around underwriting. I talked about that earlier. And then fraud detection is definitely, we are using it as well. Predicting propensity scores for different risk products that we are selling in the marketplace, that's definitely a use case for us. And then also understanding what is our product roadmap and how do we really paint the picture of the product roadmap from a strategy perspective. And then fraud detection, I mentioned earlier already. We are also looking at forecasting mechanism. How can we forecast better on the client services side, on the call center side? So that's been one of the key interest areas for us. And the next best action, which you'll definitely, if you don't know about it, I would definitely encourage you to read a lot more about next best action, especially as it comes to not only the insurance industry, but all the other verticals as well. And next best action is essentially deriving the insights, given all the historical data that we have. How do we derive insights on what the FR is wanting to go after, what the client is wanting to go after? When I talk about the use case, the end goal always is provide a seamless client experience to the clients. And the way we work and deliver these use cases, which if you're in a data science career, which I have always been, I would highly encourage you to have a greater understanding of the business as you're driving any project that you're driving. Get to know what your business wants, spend a lot more time with the business users. And when I think about how we have structured the team, even for data science internally within NM, our data science teams are heavily embedded with our business teams. We constantly iterate with them on the report out cycles. PI report out is what we call. And we learn from them. So it's always a translation between what we deliver, which is, or how we think about solutions. It's highly complex always. So we have to simplify it and do a translation with the business to also understand what they are trying to go after. So there's a convergence of sciences that have starting to happen a lot more than what it used to happen when I was growing up in the data science career. So I would highly encourage all of you to really focus on convergence of sciences as well as you're building your career within the data science space.
Yeah, we're going to run short on time. I don't see Dustin coming in. Because Anju, you hit on a couple of things that I want to make sure that we leave with the audience as they think about applying for roles at Northwestern Mutual or otherwise. Anju hit on be client focused, know your why, know how to deliver on the objective, connect the dots. You can have lots of different roles in this space, but whether you're an analyst or engineer, help help each other and help your other peers on these teams connect the dots. And it's been mentioned already today, be courageous, be ready to fail, and get in there and build, get messy, and then learn and grow as you go. Dustin, I think you did it again.
I did it again. So thank you both for doing this. This has been awesome to kind of get that real perspective from inside the walls at a leading organization like Northwestern Mutual on what data looks like and the kinds of things you're working on and who you work with. Very cool. So helpful, I'm sure, to many. There was lots of good questions and good comments in the chat. I know there is going to be, I believe there's a representative or two from Northwestern in the chat. So I'm sure they will try to get to as many of those questions as they can. I also put the link in the chat to the career site for Northwestern Mutual. So please do check that out.
Thank you.
Very
cool.
cool.
Pleasure. Thank you, Dustin.
Absolutely. Thanks to you both. Really do appreciate it. I am going to introduce our next speaker. So our next speaker is, there he is, Dave. Hey, Dave. So Dave is a principal at Baker Tilly, another awesome organization. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm not going to waste any time. I'm just going to give the stage right over to, whoops, I guess I'm going over this way to Dave.
Yeah, thank you, Dustin. Appreciate everybody's time and giving me the opportunity to talk here a little bit about Baker Tilly, kind of roles within Baker Tilly and where we see things going. So really quick on my background, I've been in the data and analytics space now going on 20 plus years. I actually kind of fell into it. I was a CPA, or at least I passed the exam. And before I got to practice my 1,000 hours, I think it takes to get licensed, I started to do software development and realized I liked that much better. I ended up at a small consulting firm that got acquired by a big consulting firm. I went out on my own for 5 years. I started my own firm. I sold my firm, and now here I am at Baker Tilly. Baker Tilly is the 8th largest public accounting firm in the United States. We have roughly 6,000 employees, and we're continue to grow, continue to push. I'm specifically within our digital group, and I run our data solutions area. So I'll kind of leave that as my introduction. Kind of what I want to talk about a little bit is what are the different types of roles and things that we see in the data space. There's really two parts of that. There's internal is how we're trying to drive and leverage data. And then there's within professional services and the kind of things that we do for our clients. So I'll talk really quick about some of the internal things that we're doing. Internally at Baker Tilly, we're looking at data like any other organization would. We're looking at it from an operational perspective. How do we make sure that we're effectively running our projects? How do we make sure that we're satisfying the needs of our clients? How are we being fiscally responsible as a partner organization? All of those things that you would think of in any traditional organization. We're also looking at a lot of market research and things to help us drive our practices. So we have a pretty heavy vision and look at data through our growth strategies organization that gives us all the kind of market intelligence, everything from what PE firms are buying, what portfolio companies, and how are those related, and how do I analyze my revenue by geography across those so I know how to better target services that I want to deliver out into the market. We have our internal kind of accounting functions that are helping us do analytics. And then we have a more broad piece that's starting now that I'm really excited about and actually get to be engaged in, which is our efforts around data monetization. So we're looking at it as an organization saying, look, we understand how to bring together disparate pieces of information. As an example, within our healthcare practice, we bring together Medicaid data, Medicare data, and we help use that information to inform our clients on what's happening. And we can do a lot more of that, I think, across different industry groups. So we have an active effort right now and actually an open role for a director of data monetization that's out there where we're trying to understand how do we take data and actually use it as a product we're bringing back into the market. So I think that's kind of a fun area. So those are some of the inside things that we're doing with data, again, running the business, and then on the advanced end, kind of doing this data monetization piece. For clients, we're covering everything that people have talked about here, and a little bit of strategy work. So we have data analysts on the team who do exactly the roles that other folks have talked about, except we're doing those in a number of different client scenarios. We have data scientists on team. They get to do some fun work around forensic analysis. So myself and others have actually had, I don't know if we want to call it an opportunity or not, to be deposed in part of cases as we go in and we talk about what we're finding in the data and how does that data support a given case that somebody is trying to make. We're using data science to help community-based organizations. We have 2 primary nonprofits where we're looking at how do they distribute what are the resources that they're stewards of, how do they best distribute those in their community. And we have another organization that we're working with, we're helping them kind of identify how to get back to some recreational sports programs and drive participation. So a lot of different interesting things across all those roles: data analysts, data scientists. We have data engineers who will work on really large kind of interesting projects, moving data from A to B for big organizations. We're working with one of the largest organizations in Wisconsin right now, trying to push them over the finish line of a big ERP migration. So really, when you talk about kind of working at a client site and being able to interact there from a professional services experience, I'd say the difference is there's a lot of variety. All kinds of industries you get to work with. The hard skills stay the same. All those hard skills in the jobs reports are there, but we're moving from project to project. We have to onboard very quickly. We have to learn the business very quickly. We have to build confidence quickly. So those are some of the kind of fun things that we get to do from a professional services perspective. Kind of the vision that we see as we're looking out there as an organization and where we're trying to go and where honestly I think a lot of organizations are going to move to once they have a lot of the operational analytics nailed down. They're going to look at 2 primary areas for it, and you could kind of lump it into this notion of data monetization, but they're going to look at how do they actually digitally transform their organization. I mentioned really quickly this community-based youth sports organization. They are trying to transform themselves. They're trying to use the data to better understand how they target communities, how they drive participation, how they get volunteers engaged. If they can do this and reverse the trend that they've been seeing in their participation rates, they will completely transform the organization by taking a view on just how they score different elements of that and then pay attention to the right things. Monetization is another one that continues to crop up as organizations realize that they're collecting these vast amounts of data. How do they really contribute and drive value to it? Not just monetizing it as selling it into the marketplace and trying to get a revenue stream from it, although that is there, but that doesn't have to be a direct sale. That can be adding on to a different product. All of us now have smart devices and things that are driven by data. We have consumer goods organizations that we work with who are leveraging IoT to give back feedback and metrics. If you have a new car, you're getting things that tell you, hey, you need service at this time. Those are the types of monetization ideas that organizations are looking for, besides just driving down costs, which is also a big factor. So I know I went through it pretty quick, trying to pull some time back here for a few minutes, but I just wanted to open that door that when you think about roles and careers in analytics, one, I saw a lot of questions early. You don't have to start with a data and analytics degree. I mean, within our organization, I have people that have a music degree. I have lots of people that have engineering degrees. My lead actually has a theater degree. So there's all kinds of opportunities within professional services. And I think data and analytics in general, if you learn the hard skills, you start to go back and kind of understand the other pieces the presenters have talked about. Be a constant learner. You have to always be learning. If you're a constant learner, you have that thirst for it, that thirst for knowledge, you can move forward in a lot of these areas.
Thank you so much, Dave. That was awesome. I don't think I'm on mute this time. So
Nope.
yeah. Thanks so much. I just one follow-up question. I'll summarize kind of what I've seen from several questions over the course of this sessions so far while you were speaking and when Anju and Mark were speaking as well. And that is kind of, if you don't have all of the hard skills that you see in a job posting around analytics or data science, what's from your perspective, someone that's hired a lot of folks into roles, what's kind of that one or two things that's kind of, if you think 80-20 rule, like that's the 80% that you're looking for?
I'll hit it in two pieces. Well, one, and give you one example because of the time. It's a growth mindset. That is the most important thing. We know the skills are changing and moving all of the time. So we want people with a growth mindset. As an example, I had somebody once where I asked him, I said, give me a project or a research thing that you've done outside of work that demonstrates some of your technical skills. And he's like, well, I don't know if this is a silly example, but my dog ate my remote and I needed a solution for that. So what I did, I had a Raspberry Pi and I had the radio frequency piece to it. And so I wrote an app on my phone to use the Raspberry Pi as a remote control. I was like, sold. Come on in. Like, we can teach you other things, but that aptitude to kind of mess with that and tinker, that's great.
That's awesome. No, that's a really cool example. I love that. So Tally summarized it here. Growth mindset. Think of those real examples, real life applications, of how you can apply your skills to solve a problem. Thanks so much, Dave. Really do appreciate you coming on. That was awesome. And I'm going to go ahead and introduce our next speaker. So next, we have another amazing organization. We are so thrilled to have these three organizations join us. Snowflake. So from Snowflake, we have Ava Murray and Blaine Carper, who I'm going to bring up on the screen right now.
Hello.
Welcome.
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining us from across the pond here. So I am going to go off screen and let you start.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Blaine Carper. I am a senior strategy and analytics analyst supporting our EMEA marketing team. But that may be my title. I actually really consider myself more of a data diplomat who spends the majority of their time trying to get stakeholder buy-in on all of the beautiful data that we are producing and trying to drive action from.
And I'm Eva Murray. I'm lead evangelist at Snowflake, responsible for the EMEA region. And what I do a lot in my day is to look at the little light of my webcam and speak to it as well. Now, when Blaine and I prepared for this talk, we thought there's a lot of unknown unknowns, and it's twofold. So firstly, we have the position that many of you might be in, where you think, how do I even get into this whole data industry? How can I start a career? Because many of these jobs are very hidden, right? No one ever talks about it. You don't see them on the street. You don't know what's out there. And today was a great way to actually experience and hear about some of the experiences people are having. And then there's also the unknowns in what's actually happening in the job. Once you get your foot in the door, what will you be asked to do? And I'm going to have Blaine actually elaborate a little bit on that. So the unknowns about your job.
Thanks, Eva. The unknowns were something that I personally was really completely in the dark on when I joined Snowflake almost 6 years ago. I have no technical background whatsoever. I have a master's in gender studies. I thought I was going to be in academia forever. And I joined Snowflake with a very, very open mind, that growth mindset that we've been talking about. And over the course of my time at Snowflake, just learning and learning and learning new different skills, trying to get a full picture of the business, to the point where I thought, you know what, I want to go more technical. So when I joined Marketing Intelligence, my current team, I taught myself SQL, taught myself Tableau, and thought this is going to be a totally technical role, numbers all the time. And it turns out that my academia skills actually come in handy a lot more often than I would have thought. I spend the majority of my time, like I said earlier, getting stakeholder buy-in on all of the data that we're producing, helping them interpret it to drive action. So that big unknown for strategy and analytics really was around driving the business forward through connecting with stakeholders, not just running all of the queries and building the dashboards and putting the data out there.
For me, some of that unknown stuff came when I graduated from university and I joined Deloitte to be a consultant. And my background is also not technical. I did a degree in HR, psychology, accounting, and commercial law. And my goal was to actually go into the HR side of consulting. So, change management, all those kind of things. And that's what I applied for. And on day one, I find out I'm actually in the enterprise information management team. So technology projects, transformations, introducing new solutions. And I freaked out for a moment. And then I thought, I'm sure they know what they're doing. So maybe I'll just roll with it. And I'm so glad it happened that way. But I couldn't have predicted it. I couldn't even have tried to go in there because it wasn't even on my radar. And then actually getting into data more and more over time was just really fortunate, because if you had asked me after school or maybe during my university years, do you want to work in data? I mean, I had statistics at university and I was pretty good at it, but it required the most effort because it just didn't come easy to me. And I would have never asked for a career in data or pursued that until I was nudged and shoved into the direction. And I wanted to talk briefly about what it's like to work at a tech vendor, because I've seen the data industry from different perspectives. When I first had a proper data role using Tableau first up, I worked for a customer, Commonwealth Bank in Australia. So this was literally 10 years ago. And I first got exposure to Tableau. I was analyzing data, I was creating visualizations and dashboards. And I realized this is so much fun and I can actually do something big here. I want to do this all day, every day. It's literally what I said. And I was fortunate that I met a hiring manager at a conference where I then got to join a Tableau partner. So I went from being a customer to becoming a partner. And I was then a consultant for Tableau. So I was doing client projects, but I also became a trainer for Tableau desktop and server. So I got to experience teaching others the software, but also using it on consulting projects. And from there, I joined a tech vendor, a technology partner in Germany before joining Snowflake 2 years ago. And what I really love about working at a technology partner or at a technology company is there's so much innovation. There's a great product. Everything focuses on the product and how we can make it great for the customer. But also there are still all those traditional, typical business units in our company. It's not just developers that work at Snowflake. There are HR people, there are finance people, marketing people, we're both in marketing. And so there are a number of different roles and they all touch data in some way or another. But you don't have to be a developer, you don't have to write code, and you can still have a great career in this industry, but also at a tech company doing things where you are adjacent to the data teams or adjacent to the developer teams, and you can bring in your knowledge and your passion. But for me, Blaine mentioned she really wanted to do this really technical role. That was her expectation. I enjoy the technical, but I'm better at other stuff. And I really love that in this role, I get to experience that and I get to really live that out. So that's been really nice for me. And I hope that some of you would consider working for a technology company, because I think it offers a lot. And yes, we have internal roles like Blaine's, and there are also so many other ones as well, where you can use your data skills and develop more data skills, whether it's going into the direction of data engineering, data science, and others, where you can really unleash your talent and your experiences. And with that, Blaine, what are we looking for? What kind of roles are we hiring for?
We are hiring globally. So I'm actually hiring an intern, so someone who's still in school, can be undergrad or postgrad, but someone who is looking to get their feet wet in the strategy and analytics space. So that looking at the business problems, divining from the data where we are and where we might be 2 years from now, and helping us, discover what kind of solutions we can make so that we move the business forward. But we're also hiring, in my team in particular, data scientists in the US, We have another internship open in APJ for strategy and analytics. And then, like Eva was saying, we aren't isolating our data teams to just, your typical domain of engineering. We have analysts in product, we have them in finance, we have them in HR. So there's really a lot of different opportunities across the company for you to get into a data role. And even if you come in for a more, traditional business role, like myself, I started in business development and then did just about every job possible in sales operations. But along the way, I taught myself all of the different technical skills because I was surrounded by people who were supportive of me at Snowflake and helping me along the way and learning those skill sets. And it helps that, we do work for a company where data is our business, and I got to learn SQL on Snowflake, but that's just one of the really, really excellent opportunities that we have. So I believe that Dustin's going to share our careers page, but I really strongly urge you to have a look at what we have to offer. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me and Eva. Happy to talk more.
Yes, definitely. We will share that in the post-event recap, and I'll drop it into the comments as well. Thank you both so much. Just one question. If I were to summarize several questions I've seen throughout the event that I think you guys would have a great perspective on is, if you're looking at a role and you're just getting started and it requires some things that, you don't have experience in, you're trying to break in though to the field, like what would be your advice to break in? Like, should you just apply to, every position or should you network, or what's your take on breaking into the field?
So my role said desirable would be a master's degree, which I don't have, still worked out. I think if there is something on the requirements list that you feel you really don't have yet, but you have all these other things, be unafraid to show all these other things. And, previously you had in the previous talks mentioned, cool projects that you've done that were outside of work. Maybe they were part of your university degree or something else. Showing what you do more than the professional side of you is something that I learned in consulting actually is really valuable. I worked with a woman who was a Cirque du Soleil artist and she got into consulting. One of my closest friends, he was the water polo captain for New Zealand. This is all the plus ones that you can do. Now, you don't have to be like an amazing athlete, but what are the things that you do that make you interesting, that you can introduce into your job and actually that will add value? And that goes typically beyond the technical hard skills and into the softer side of things.
And to that point, Eva, one of the huge things that I look for as a hiring manager is communication. Like I said, I didn't know any SQL whatsoever up until 2 years ago, but I knew how to speak to the business. I knew how to communicate. And when I'm speaking to candidates, that's what I'm looking for. You can learn hard skills. That's easy enough. I mean, easy is relative, but what's most important to me is not only what makes you interesting, but also how can you communicate with the business? So don't be afraid to apply if you don't tick all the boxes. And if there's a company out there that's really, really interesting to you, find somebody who's in a role that you're keen on, reach out to them, start a conversation, and it never hurts to connect with people.
Awesome. I love that advice. And I just wanted to close it by sharing this comment from Latoya. Cool. I was a fashion stylist in my previous career. Yeah. So thank you both very much. I love that answer and agree with it wholeheartedly. Thank you both. Appreciate it. Please connect with Ava and Blaine. I did share their LinkedIn profiles and we'll also share the Snowflake career site. So thank you again both for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Okay. We are moving right along. We have made up some time, which is awesome. So what we're going to do next is actually something really cool. Brandi's going to introduce it while I get the video ready.
Yeah. Thanks, Dustin. Yeah. So our next segment, which, we have 20 minutes left of the event. Make sure you stick around. We have giveaways coming up. But next, we're actually going to be bringing up a video from Tessa White, who's the job doctor. We reached out to Tessa. We asked if she'd be interested in answering some of the questions that you had. So we actually sent out a survey. We collected some questions, things about like, are you on the right career path? And how do you leverage your current skills if you want to become an analyst? Or what are some things that you can do to really set yourself apart from other candidates? I know, Eva and Blaine just talked about that, but we're going to get Tessa's perspective on that. And so she's put together a video for us specifically to answer those questions because she couldn't be with us here today. But we do have a video from her where, yeah, she's going to answer some of the most asked questions that we've heard from. So we'll watch that video and then we are going to wrap up the event. So stay tuned.
Yes, and I can confirm that the giveaways have closed and I have drawn the winners. So definitely we will be announcing them after this video, which I am going to put on right now.
If your job is on life support, you need the job doctor.
Hi, my name is Tessa White. For those of you who don't know me, I'm known as the job doctor on social media. I actually think that's pretty funny because I am the most unlikely influencer you've ever met. I have about 25 years of HR experience. I left corporate America because I wanted to work the other side of the equation and help individuals with their careers. I've seen so many things through the years of how careers rise and fall and the conversations you don't get to hear behind closed doors. So my daughter said, let me post a few of your videos on TikTok. They're really good. She did. 2 days later, my son calls from California and he says, Mom, I don't think this is possible, but my girlfriend said she saw you on her For You page on TikTok. Well, I looked online, I had 10,000 followers, and I have averaged about 1,000 followers a day since then. Now I have over 1 million followers on my platforms, and I love helping people figure out how to untangle the mess of work and how to balance out the power between companies and people again and create more frictionless career growth. So today we're going to answer some questions for you because I've got some that you sent in and I would love to talk to you personally about how to help with your career. The first question that came in is, how do I know I'm on the correct path in my career? And the simple answer is you really don't. I didn't know and you're not going to know. And in part it's because I don't believe there's just one correct path for people. I've probably had 3 or 4 different stories, completely different stories in my career, and none of them were necessarily wrong. What you'll find is that you will gravitate towards things that you love and things you do well, and you'll shy away from the things that you don't. The advice I have for you is to experiment. There's a time to experiment and then there's a time to lock in. Typically in your 20s, up until about age 32, 33 is a great time to just experiment. Find out what you like. And there is no lost time when you're experimenting. It really is just refining the thing that you like and the thing that you enjoy the most. And you have a higher likelihood of ending up in not just a job, but something better than a job, a career you love. A few people will be lucky enough to do a calling or something they just absolutely can't wait to get up in the morning and do. But what I don't want you to think is that that happens to everybody, because it doesn't. It's a very few people who actually get to do that. When you hit your 30s and 40s, that's when you really have to lock in. And that's when you really cement what your future is going to look like. And I don't want to scare people by saying that because you can always pivot. I pivoted at age 50, 52. But you can always cement and then grow your career during that critical decade, because once you hit about 45, your pay doesn't seem to move up much after that typically, so you can't waste time. That's when you have to get serious. That would be my advice to you. I love this next question. I get it a lot. It's, what are the 1 to 2 things that will set me apart from other candidates in a job? Is it soft skills, hard skills? How do I stand out? And the answer is, it isn't as much about the skills as it is your ability to tell the story correctly. So let me give you an example. If I tell somebody that I'm an HR professional with 25 years of experience, that is a snoozer answer. And yet every other person that's going for the HR job is going to say the same thing. The way you set yourself apart is you do 2 things. You say, What are my special skills, the things that set me apart, my special sauce? And for me, I would say I'm the HR person you would want to hire if you are a company that needs to put infrastructure in place to make things go fast, and if you have a high merger, acquisition, and growth strategy. Can you hear how much more impactful that is? Because I got more niche instead of staying so broad. And the next thing you do to set yourself apart is you share professional highlights in terms of the outcomes that you've gotten. When you can share outcomes, like I came into a company and within 6 months helped take them public, that's something that makes me believe you. But what most people do is they just share resume bullet points, and it just sounds like white noise. So that would be my best advice to you on that question. I got a great question about how do you pivot careers midway through? I have somebody who wants to move into data science, and that's not the area that they've been in before. Where do you start with a pivot? Well, there's a few tricks that I want to tell you to try. First of all, you want to begin building a resume that feels and looks like the job you want. So first of all, try and get some classes, some certifications. They don't even have to be really difficult ones or really expansive ones. That just starts the ball rolling. The next thing you need to do is look at the job description of the jobs that you want. I would lift and shift the way they talk about that job onto my resume. Don't lie, but take the words that they use, because if you understand how applicant tracking systems work, the resume is going to read keywords off of the job description, not the way you talk about the job. And so your resume may not even make it through to be interviewed if you're not using the right words. If you're not getting callbacks, it could be that you're using the wrong words on your resume. Here's a trick I want to teach you. Put your resume through a word cloud generator. Let me show you how it's done. First, do a Google search on word cloud generator. You're going to see dozens of different options. Pick one, they're all free. Now cut and paste your resume into the word cloud generator, and it's going to show you a picture of the words most commonly used in your resume. There you go. This is a word cloud of your resume. Look at the words here, and then take the job description and do the same thing. You're going to see a different set of words that pop out here. What you want to do is take the words showing up here, make sure they're embedded in your resume, and do it again until there's a pretty close match. For more tips on how to get hired and how to get a job, follow me here. We are going to dissect a resume for a minute. And I think it's useful because when people see me talk through a line-by-line review of a resume and show you what I'm actually after and how you can transform it, I think it's really useful. So let's look at this one. I've hidden the name and identifying information. The top third of the resume is the very most important part. And you'll notice we go straight from the name into objective. I don't like that. What I would prefer to see, and I'll show you a sample in a minute, is across the top, a banner with 3 key words that describe the kinds of jobs that you're after. This is like the elevator pitch of the elevator pitch, and it helps drive somebody down and say, yes, I'm interested in this person, I'm going to read further in the resume. So it becomes a really critical place for the eye to hit. On objective, the big mistake that people make with objectives is they use a whole heck of a lot of words that don't mean anything. This one talks about, I want to help clients get the most out of technology and data through business intelligence and data analytics. But that's, I think, inherent in the job. So the question I would ask is, to make that more powerful, what is your superpower? What is the thing people call you out on about the way you look at analytics? Do you catch things, for instance, that other people don't catch? Do you find data and you're able to make it really actionable better than other people? What is the secret sauce you have? And let's make that less general and more specific and niche. I would lead with, I'm a person that simplifies very complicated data into visualizations that help you make decisions about the business. If you can get really specific about what kind of company would hire you and go as niche as possible, will help make that more powerful. Now, on the resume, the next thing this person goes to is certification and education. I disagree with that. I think the next thing that you do, especially if you have at least 3 to 4 years of business experience, is professional highlights. The reason is this: A resume is supposed to make people believe you, that you can do what you say you can do. A job description is nothing but bullet points on a piece of paper, and it means absolutely nothing. But what does mean something is outcomes, results. So I want you to think about what are 3 business highlights. Start with the outcome, the thing you did that was so great, and then fill in the blanks with how you did it. So an easy way to think about this is, what was it like before I came? What was it like after I came? And I want to show you this after resume just to show you what that looks like. Now take a look at the resume top that I'm showing you. Here's what I was talking about. There's the bar at the top, giving a high level elevator pitch. I say what I'm best at, get very niche, and then look, there's the example of professional highlights. I always start with the accomplishment and then how I did it. Take a look at that. Now, if this person did this to the top third of their resume, even if they did nothing else, the rest of their resume would completely transform it. Next question, how do you effectively lead through change? Change is very, very difficult. And if there's just one piece of advice I can give you, it's to make sure and share your message over and over. You're going to feel like a broken record. You're going to feel like a broken record. You're going to feel like a broken record. You get the point. You do need to share your message multiple times and let people know, what is it that we're trying to accomplish? What does winning look like? During times of change, people leave because they don't have answers. And I promise you the answer they're going to come up with is way worse than what the reality usually is. So you've got to fill in the blanks on those answers. Share with your people every day, this is what we need to do to win, and this is what winning looks like. If there are adjustments, share. If there's bad news, share. I found with today's generation, what they want is transparency. And without transparency, you're going to lose people's minds and hearts. So don't be afraid to share a little bit of bad news, as long as you're also asking your people to come up with the problem solving around the bad news. When people feel like they're needed and they can make a difference and they're part of a solution, you can engage them. But people will leave so quickly during change if there's an absence of information or if they don't understand what's going on or don't feel useful. Period. There are 3 things every single manager should provide to his or her employees. The first one is clarity. You should never have to guess whether you're doing well or not doing well. Your manager needs to be able to express what you need to be working on and address problems the moment they happen and not clear far down the line. The second thing a manager always needs to have is ethics. And by ethics, I mean you need to keep your word to your people. If you say you're going to do something, you do it. You follow through on that. People need to be able to count on their manager to have their back. And so what you say in front of your people is every bit as important as what you do behind closed doors. And lastly, a manager needs to operate with candor. That means we don't beat around the bush, you don't speak in code, you say what you mean and you mean what you say. Apparently, there are a lot of you looking for jobs right now because I'm having a lot of job-related questions. And one of them is, what happens if I submit my resume and I'm not hearing anything back? As I mentioned before, 9 times out of 10, if you're not getting called back, it's a resume problem. It's not a you problem. It's the way that you're framing up the resume, and I'm going to show you in a minute what it needs to look like. But don't be afraid. If you submit a resume, you should not let that time go to waste, because here's what's happening behind closed doors. There are candidates who are reaching out to the recruiter or the hiring manager or the company and giving proof points of why they should be somebody that should be considered for the job. And so when you just sit still and kind of shrug your shoulders and hope you get a call, there are people that are hustling behind closed doors to get those jobs. Only word of caution I would give you is don't drive somebody crazy and say, have you made a decision yet? Have you made a decision yet? People don't like that at all. Some acceptable things to do are to check in and say, I know you were looking for this particular skill set for the job. I found this article that's very interesting that I thought might resonate with you. Just wanted to send it your way. Would you pass it along to the hiring manager? Something like that is non-obtrusive, And it's going to be a way for you to stay ever present in somebody's mind without being irritating. The last thing I want you to know is I've written a book, and it is just coming out next week. It's called The Unspoken Truths for Career Success. And it's about how to navigate pay, promotions, power, politics, all of the really hard things in a company. I wrote it because I got to see so many people's careers rise and fall, and I got to see what was going on behind closed doors. It is the book that I wish I would have had as a young professional, because I think I could have avoided a lot of problems. It has scripts, say this, not that, do this, not that. And it really is a reference manual. What I hope is that people buy it and have dog-eared pages that they can reference throughout their career. And it also goes through the 5 stages of growth that we just barely touched on, so that you can know what stage you're in, what you can expect, what the fatal flaws are, and what will absolutely kill your career if you don't get right. It also helps you know what is the skill set I need to be developing now so that I'm ready for the next stage of growth. As I talk to people in mentoring sessions every single day, I know this stuff works. I wish you could read the notes that I get from people every single day that say, this makes a difference in my career and this has helped my career. I hope you'll consider buying the book. I really am very, very proud of it. And I also hope you'll tune into the Job Doctor podcast. It's called The Job Doctor is In. We just rolled it out 5 weeks ago, and it's already number 21 in the nation on career podcasts, which is very, very exciting. So it's a deep dive of the things that I talk about with more complete answers and with callers who we solve the problem right there on the phone. And I think you'll learn a lot. Thanks for having me join you, everybody. Have a great conference.
If your job is on life support, you need the Job Doctor. My brain is a walking database of thousands of case studies on how careers rise and fall. I'll help you diagnose what's really going on. It's the guidance you need to get back on track from someone who's been there. You can make the money you always wanted to make, doing the type of work you have always wanted to do. You may just need a little help from the Job Doctor.
Okay, very cool. That was awesome. I saw some really engaging comments and feedback in the chat.
Yeah, the word cloud thing especially is such like a great way to visualize the words that you're using in your resume versus the job description. I never thought of that.
Yeah, totally. And I saw some folks were already creating their own word cloud. Be sure to, if you're comfortable with it, we'd love to see it. Share it on LinkedIn. Tag Tessa. Tessa White is her name on LinkedIn. Take hashtag Data Career Summit too. I did want to share, we actually have a copy of Tessa's book. So it's The Unspoken Truths for Career Success. I'm a huge fan of Tessa. I've been following her for quite some time. Her TikTok videos, it's at Job Doctor Tessa. Put it in the chat, are amazing. It's one of those rare, she's one of those rare folks to follow where she really can, make an impact directly, immediately on a given day to what you're working on, to the impact that you're making. So I would definitely recommend following her. I know Brandi's a fan of hers as well.
Yeah, just really actionable insights and being on TikTok, right? It kind of, or Instagram, like has that short form, like they're very consumable tips. So highly recommend checking her out, checking the book out for more insights. But we are a few minutes away from the end of our summit here, and I know we've got some amazing giveaways, right? We do have I think like a discount code for Tessa's book, which was linked in the channel or in the chat rather, but we also have 3 amazing giveaways. And I believe, Dustin, if I'm not mistaken, you have already selected the winners.
Yes, for sure. And I did want to make sure that you take a look at the link I put in the chat for Tessa's new book. There is a special offer that she's giving for attendees of the Data Career Summit today. So check it out. Check out the link. Check out her book. And make sure you take advantage of that special bonus she's made available to those attending this summit. I did also want to, before we do the giveaways, release the date. Drum roll, please. I don't know, Brandi, if you've got it. There we go. of the fall summit. So if you liked this summit, please do share it with friends. If everyone could invite, just one or two other people, we could get to over 10,000 signed up. We actually had over 7,000 signed up for this event. So tell your friends, and let's continue the momentum and help each other break into and move up in the field. So it's going to be September 22nd, and the link to register for it is going to be going into the comments right now.
Awesome.
There it is. Okay. Yeah. Very cool. All right. Got it. And then again, please feel free to share your learnings to #DataCareerSummit on your favorite social platform. We'd love to hear what you learned and how the event went for you. Now, to Brandi's point, we do have some amazing giveaways. So I'm going to pull us both back up on the actually, I can't pull us up with this image. That's okay. I want to just recap what they were. So the first one that we're going to announce is 2 full-year memberships to Maven Analytics. So if you go to mavenanalytics.com, if you don't win, you can read more about them. An amazing training platform, very comprehensive training platform with all kinds of resources for finding jobs. Take a look at them. And I'm going to announce the winner for those 2 free full-year subscriptions right now. I'm not going to share my screen because it shows the full email addresses of the individuals that won, but I am going to read the first part of the email address so you know you're a winner, and then we will reach out to you after the event, immediately after the event, actually, to notify you won if you're not watching live right now. But if your email address starts with VBVARAD247, you are a winner of one of the full year memberships to Maven Analytics. They have promised to get access to you very quickly once we notify them that you won. So keep an eye out for an email from us. And then if your email address starts with NETWRITERCA, looks like NetWriterCA, you are also a winner. So those are the 2 winners that we'll be reaching out to right away. Congratulations. It's an amazing prize, and we really appreciate Maven Analytics providing these. I think it's $360 a year for these memberships. So some really nice prizes there. Next, I'm going to pull up, we had another generously donated giveaway here. So from Dedicated, 3 full year memberships to Dedicated Circle. So this is another kind of comprehensive training platform. If you're looking to get in analytics, perfect place to go there. There's tons of courses that you can take to learn the skills that you need. So we're going to pull those 3 winners right now, and I'm going to do the same thing. I am going to let you know who they are, and then we will reach out to you immediately to get you access. So if your email address has _AMAZA in it, you are a winner. We'll reach out to you. If your email address has KENYAYOPP in it, you're a winner. And also if your email address has KALYANPRSD in it, you are also a winner. So congratulations to the 3 winners there. You will each be getting a full year membership to Dedicated Circle. And thank you very much to Dedicated. You can check out Dedicated at dedicated.com to learn more about everything that they do. Now, we've got a big one coming up here. We are going to award, I think actually the founder of this company is in the chat, Avery Smith. We're going to award a free scholarship. This is lifetime access to his boot camp, to the data analytics accelerator program put on by Data Careers Jumpstart. So that free boot camp membership, another drum roll here, is going to BHUV17. If your email address contains BHUV17, you have, congratulations, won a free scholarship to the Data Analytics Accelerator program, which is intended to put someone on the fast track to getting a data analytics job. So congratulations to all these winners. We'll be reaching out to you immediately after the event. Okay. I will once again put up onto the screen the date for the next event.
Yeah.
There it is.
There
Brandi,
you go. Yeah.
say something.
Well, yeah, I was just gonna mention something. Oh no, feel free to throw that up there. I think just a few kind of wrap up items from me, and then Dustin, feel free to close it out. But thank you to everybody who joined us today. Thank you to all of the amazing speakers. It's really wonderful to be able to bring together such a just amazing group of people with different perspectives and different backgrounds. It's really fun to see. Great questions, great commentary in the chat. We absolutely love to hear it. As Dustin mentioned, share your learnings on #DataCareersSummit. We really love to hear that, the insights that you found most impactful. We do have this event already set up and ready for you to register for. Content is still to be determined. So as a wrap up to this event, I'm going to be sending out an email that has a survey. We want to know how we did, and then what ideas you have for our next event. So make sure you fill that out. That's all I was going to say, Dustin. So thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Brandi. And I did want to note too, I put the link out there again to the registration for the next event, which is going to be September 22nd, 2023. You're going to see two options when you go in there, which is a little bit different than how we've set this up in the past. So the first option is going to be our recommended ticket price for the event, which is $10. However, there is also a free option. So if you don't have the $10, feel free to take the free option. The $10 goes towards covering our production costs and continuing to recruit top-notch speakers and put on an event that can benefit everyone here. So I did just want to mention that if you can't pay the 10, feel free to take the free option. But we do recommend the $10 ticket price.
Exactly. Yeah, there is some cost that goes into the platform, the website, all of the things that we need to put this event together. So we appreciate everybody chipping in a little bit if you can. And thank you all again so much for joining us.
Thanks, everyone. We do really appreciate seeing everyone, and we will see you again in the fall.